It was an ordinary day in the divine beast continent. A crisis arose in the territory of the monkey race. Their king was killed, and so far no one has taken his place, because many had a place for the crown. People gathered near the ocean shore. They came to look at the waves. Among them was Chao Kai and her mistress. This was the first time the girl had seen such beauty. She put her hand on the wolf's muzzle. Suddenly, the beast began to growl at the ocean, as if anticipating someone else. Everyone who was nearby stared at the water. It was clear that someone was approaching land. A large sea dragon rose from the depths, with an entire palace standing on its back. It raised such gigantic waves that it almost washed away all the people on the embankment. Xiao Kai was amazed by the beauty of such a ship. Everything was new to her. The girl loved to admire everything she saw, and every time she experienced indescribable emotions of joy. Meanwhile, the minister saw who had come to them and ordered them to immediately beat the drums. Because the prince has returned to the monkey kingdom. The sea dragon sank to the bottom, and a young man came out of the palace and approached the edge of the observation deck. With his eyes, he looked for his father, whom he had not seen for a very long time. It was Lu Jun. He wandered around the world of the Great Thousand for about 3 years, and now the time has come to return to his native Dongshuan. Descending to land, the young man saw that all the chief ministers and chiefs had come out to meet him. They turned to him, Your Highness, and told him how good it was that he had finally returned to his homeland. An elder came out from the crowd to the guy. He told Lu Jun that they could not protect his father, the Monkey King, and therefore they killed him. But the main thing is that the king's killer has not yet been found. The prince asked not to blame himself for the death of his relative. The young man will now not be able to calm down until he finds the culprit. He is ready to do anything to make the killer pay for the death of his father. The elder called the guy to join the path to heaven. This is a mandatory test that will relieve fatigue after the trip and show everyone how much levels his cultivation has increased. The path to heaven is 18 columns on which monkeys sit, along which there is a pool. At the end of the last pair of monkeys stands a mighty gorilla. Lu Jun entered the water. He himself was wondering what stage he was at from perception to control. But what was the surprise of himself and all the young geniuses who were nearby? He had a divine soul, and now he had returned to the spiritual movement stage again. This was the worst result because he dropped 2 levels lower than before and was at the very beginning of his journey. Only 2 columns were lit. Lu Jun stood in this pool and listened to people whispering behind him that now he was no longer number 1 among the monkeys. But the hero did not want to explain why this happened. To prevent the Monkey King from worrying about his son's safety, he sent him to the South Seas of the Kunpeng race to seek refuge from the wild boar emperor Dongshuan. But having lost his genius skills, he became a laughing stock in the eyes of Yuan Feng and Gu Yuzjiao, who were the son and daughter of the elders. They said that Lu Jun wasted their time. The young genius continued to humiliate the young man. He asked how he dared to return home with such a level of cultivation. And if he now takes the throne, the race will become a laughing stock throughout the continent. But an elder came to the prince's defense and put Yuan Fang in his place, reminding him that the heir to the throne was standing in front of him. And now His Highness will return and become the king of the monkeys. But the offender did not let up because his father is temporarily performing duties in the city, but now his candidacy is in question. He suggested that the third elder go home and not get involved in the conversation. But Lu Jun had one more defender, a shady guy with an umbrella who arrived with the prince on a sea dragon. He told Yuan Feng that it looked like fish food. The son of the first elder realized that he was dealing with a representative of the Kunpeng race and his cultivation was the same as his own. Yuan Feng boasted that in 3 days he would reach the heavenly fusion level. But the elder suspected that something was fishy here because he was moving up too quickly. After this, the son of the first elder decided to leave the conversation, taking Gu Yuzjiao with him. And Lu Jun looked after him and thought that the heavenly fusion stage was wonderful, and he killed many of them. The prince wanted to quickly return to the city of Heavenly Path. He asked the elder to make preparations. The guy couldn't wait to reveal the secret of his father's death. The company noticed that someone was sniffing behind them. Turning around, they saw a huge white wolf who came up to sniff them. Most of all, she liked the guy with the umbrella. Mistress Xiao Kai walked up behind her animal. The girl once again admired the large sea dragon and said that she was buying this ship. But Lu Jun had no intention of selling it. The elder reminded them that they needed to get to the city faster than Yuan Fang. Otherwise, he would spread rumors about the prince's cultivation. The young man thought that this girl was from the Ice Ridge Heavenly Wolf race. Her clothes were simple, but it was just a distraction. In her hands, she held a staff with a wolf's head, and this suggested the idea that it is not as simple as it seems. The girl was upset. She realized that since she left the northern region, she had been constantly hearing refusals. She didn't want to admit that her sister was right, that there were no good people outside. Having heard where the prince was going, she also wanted to join them. The girl began to call the she-wolf to go to the city of Heavenly Path, but she was nowhere to be found. Xiao Kai was occupied by the soft spot of the Kun Peng race, and he, in turn, thought that the prince could save him and began to hide behind him. From the outside, it was very funny. Meanwhile, the news that the heir had returned began to spread. By order of the elder, they were to wait for him in the forest to kill the young monkey prince Lu Jun. The wolf girl cheerfully asked the guys to keep up. She felt confident in her native environment. It turns out that she was sent by the emperor of the northern region to attend his father's funeral. There, on the embankment, she showed her golden amulet, which said that Xiao Kai was the ambassador of the wolf race. It was dangerous for the girl to remain alone, so she was sent with them. The poor guy couldn't understand why his butt got hurt. After all, the beast could have chosen someone else, but it was she who was attracted to the wolf. The bite area hurt terribly. The young man asked the prince why the old man did not take the girl with him. He was very afraid of a second attack. Lu Jun replied that it would be safer for everyone, and there might be an ambush on the main road. The young heir walked along the secret path of the forest and thought that there was nothing for him to do for now, but as soon as the funeral took place, he would return to punishing the murderer. Lu Jun remembered his friend's sore spot and promised that he would definitely find a blacksmith to make iron armor, and then he wouldn't have to worry about bites. The road through the forest came to an end, and the mountain phoenix mine began. Xiao Kai had gone far ahead, but now she came back and said that something happened there. The company headed to the scene of events. There, a clash occurred between the mine workers and the Wild Boar clan. As it turned out, the ambassador was driving past the mine and was stopped. He didn't like this, and he decided to punish the offenders from the Monkey clan by taking away the carriage from them. In order to somehow humiliate the enemy, the fat man kicks the poor guy towards the rest of the people. Everyone has long known that pigs have long crossed all boundaries and are causing chaos. Having heard this truth, the ambassador decides that everyone should be killed and raises his sharp carved sword over the head of one of the people, but does not have time to lower it on the doomed man. Tolstoy begins to be pulled by a chain vine, so much so that he even forgot his name. Neck, legs, and stomach, the merciless pig is already on his knees, unable to even take a breath. The old man was afraid to turn his head because he did not give the order to engage in battle. And none of his people had such abilities, and he couldn't wait to look his savior in the face. Lu Jun intervened in the situation because he could not calmly watch how unfairly his people were being treated. Thus, the prince intimidated the wild boar race, at least for a while. As soon as the young man loosened his grip, the chains began to gradually disappear, and he himself went to check if the old man was okay. Meanwhile, the fat man had already moved away from the monkey hug and shouted that everyone was a useless creature. He was indignant that his people rushed to run away into the scattered. Liu Chengguan was angry for a long time. He couldn't believe that they lost and thereby lost their authority among the Demon Mountain wild boar race. But this is not the end. Making an ostentatious gesture with his weapon, he invited Lu Jun to go his own way and not interfere. If he listens to his advice, then it is quite possible that he will survive. Liu Chengguan introduced himself to the prince and asked How he dared to block the path of the imperial ambassador? He recognized the young man as the son of the slain Monkey King. The fat man did not let up and ordered to give him Feather Rock, otherwise he would have to die. And if he manages to kill someone from the ape race, that will only be a plus. Lu Jun picked up the blue crystal from the ground and beckoned to Liu Chongguan. An elder decided to intervene in the squabble and said that the stone heals wounds and the mine should not be given away. The young heir threw it towards the ambassador. His accuracy was enviable because the crystal was imprinted exactly in the middle of the fat man's forehead. This angered him. It turned out to be very easy to piss off the enemy. Now nothing could save the prince from the humiliated pig. He was going to bring down all his bestial wrath on the fragile guy. The heir's support group was afraid that the guy would not survive. They saw how strong of a sword skill Liu Chongguan had, and only the guy with the umbrella remained indifferent. Hearing that they were going to turn him into powder, the young man hastened to defend himself, and again chain vines began to wrap around his arms. The pitiful spirit of the god realm is no match for him. Behind the prince towered the fire monkey, who was waiting to show off his deadly power. The young man was preparing for a quick victory because he was punctual. They were waiting for him in the city, but everything happened quickly. Liu Chongguan was hit first and flew into a rock, receiving minor damage. Having regained his senses, the fat man thought it was time to start the show. He was going to show how the boars easily defeat the monkeys. The boar ran at the guy and squealed disgustingly, putting his swords in front of him. The flash of the repeating wave covered Lu Jun. The guy realized that the enemy had not fully revealed his true stage of strength. The ambassador was at the heaven formation level. While the heir was wondering if he was hiding something else from him, Boar was wondering if it was possible at the spiritual movement stage that everyone was gossiping about to force him to use his full power. Lu Jun's friend caught the young man to prevent him from falling. He noticed that old wounds were starting to appear and offered to finish the fight himself. Expecting a retaliatory blow from his duelist, the grunt noticed that a guy with an umbrella was approaching him. He was like a bodyguard for the prince. A change of player also suited Liu Chongguan. The fat man knew that this cloudy young man was protecting the son of the deceased emperor. He even suggested that the Kunpeng race and the monkey race were up to something, and today he would be able to reveal their secret. Having put all his thoughts in order, Liu Chongguan decides to deal with all the named guests at once. For this case, he has an excellent three swords technique in stock. The first sword of furious killing went towards the representative of the Kunpeng race. He quickly reacted and let go of the umbrella. It was not just a sun protection item, but a conduit between the guy and the awakening of his sea dragon. The water dweller parried the blow, and Liu Chongguan was already preparing to test the next character, for whom he prepared to send the second diagonal trait sword. Xiao Kai took this blow. The white wolf grew in size. He grabbed the sword as if it were a stick that the owner throws while walking. She pointed her staff at the enemy, and it became clear to him that in front of him was a powerful girl from the Arctic wolves race. Liu Chongguan clearly realized that he did not have enough strength to fight against them and also the White Wolf King spirit. But confident that the secret has been revealed, he decides to retreat. Having replaced his anger with mercy, the fat man politely said goodbye to the guys and asked for forgiveness for his actions. As if, before this, they had a friendly tea party and were not going to fight to the death. Climbing into his carriage, the ambassador offers Xiao Kai a tour of the Mountain of Spirits. Feeling that the mistress was being offended, the wolf grabbed hold of the fat boars harnessed to the cart. After a quick farewell, Liu Chongguan hurriedly disperses the carriage to tell everything to his uncle, the wild boar emperor. Surprised by this change in the mood of their enemy, the guys decide to continue on their way. Lu Jun thanks Xiao Kai for his help. And on the other road to the city, there was an interrogation of the elder. He was caught in an ambush set for the prince and now stands tied to a tree. They are going to kill him if he doesn't tell where Lu Jun is. There was mourning in Dongshuan that day. Mourn for the murdered king of the monkey race, Lu Wuji. The city was ready to send its just ruler on his last journey. The coffin with his body stood in the palace where people stood around who had come to say goodbye. All the city elders were here. Yuan Hong looked calm as he waited for Lu Jun to appear. Standing next to him was the second elder, Gu Lan, who never parted with his pipe. The young geniuses entered the chambers. Yuan Fang was in a hurry to tell his father that the heir to the throne had turned into a helpless warrior. This is true because he personally saw everything with his own eyes. After listening to the information, Yuan Hong, as the temporary ruler of the city, orders the burial ceremony to begin immediately. Gu Lan objects because the funeral is tomorrow, but he remains adamant. He recalls that he fought for 10 years for the glory of the monkey race. And he has every right to give orders, and some small boy will not be a hindrance. No one dared to disobey his order. At this moment, Lu Jun enters the room. Yuan Hong could not believe that the prince was still alive because he hired professionals to kill him. The young man did not understand this situation. He fell to the floor near the coffin of his own father, but did not calculate his strength and injured his forehead. Blood began to drip. Yuan Fang came up to hold the prince. He put his hand on his shoulder and asked him to stop killing himself and control himself. Suddenly, everyone began to notice that the place where the hand of the first headman's son lay suddenly began to glow. Xiao Kai and the guy with the umbrella were waiting to see what would happen. But Lu Jun didn't need his help, especially when he was touched without warning. And this time, feeling someone else's hand, the guy pushed it away with his chain vines. The prince began to rise from his knees, and a burn remained on Yuan Fang's palm. He shouted, "What kind of rude treatment was this, and how dare he do this?" The elders froze in horror, and the young heir was amazed at such a game by the elder's son. After all, not so long ago he mocked him, and now he wanted to gain his trust. The young genius did not want to forgive such humiliation in front of everyone. He prepared his spirit weapon to prevent Lu Jun from thinking that he could get away with anything. Yuan Fang revealed the ace up the young man's sleeve, but the prince replied that being at the spiritual movement stage does not necessarily mean being weak. What's going on at the funeral? Will there really be another corpse? They stood opposite each other. Both were ready for battle because the desired throne was free. Only the strong and experienced can take this place. Gu Lan intervened in their mess. He stopped the movement of the prince's chain vines, realizing that Yuan Fang would not win. The prince could not continue. He was well brought up and had respect for his elders. The elder was delighted because it was a great success to take possession of such a treasure as this chain. She radiated a slight dominant aura, so that the enemies would not guess all the abilities of his friend. The ambassador of the Kunpeng race caught up with the guy and introduced himself. Yuan Hong immediately concluded that there was no threat coming from him. After him, there was the appearance of a wolf girl who was also ready to protect the heir. The elders were surprised how he could gain such support in such a short time, and so they stood quietly, not bothering anyone. They came to the funeral but got caught up in some stupid intrigue in the struggle for the throne. One by one, ministers and simply serving people began to leave the premises. Some people thought they had a cold. Others felt unwell. Yuan Hong also walked out, followed by his son. The elder's daughter also prepared to leave, but her father scolded her severely, calling the girl a scoundrel. She was not at all ashamed. He snapped at Gu Lan that, like everyone else, there was nothing to do here. This whole situation made the old man terribly tired. He began to cough, covering his mouth with a handkerchief. Lu Jun hurried to ask if everything was okay with him when he saw a red stain on the scarf. It was blood. Gu Lan was very apologetic for his daughter's inexcusable behavior. But this didn't bother the young man at all, because she had a strong character since childhood. Then the elder said that he was already old and his days were numbered. The old man promised that he would hold on. He wants to see how the prince will unite the people of the country, how he will avenge the death of the king and restore the greatness of the race. Blood for blood, justice for injustice. Then he asked Gu Yu's Jiao to take care of him. Going outside, she asked the old man what happened because he never complained about his health, to which he rudely replied to keep her quiet. After sniffing the blood, the she-wolf informed Xiao Kai that the blood was not real. The girl laughed and told the guys that Heavenly City is very funny, if only because the second elder coughs up chicken blood. Raging late into the night, Yuan Hong destroyed furniture and beat up his accomplices. The angry headman was angry with Lu Jun, because he returned to the city at such an inopportune time, and even with ambassadors from the southern seas and the northern region. He ordered to find out all the information about them. Yuan Hong wanted to know every little detail because he believed that the time of his reign in the city had come. It was not in vain that he patiently waited for this for many years. So this tragic day came when the funeral of the murdered king of the monkey race began. The closed coffin with the dead man was taken out of the palace, and a long column of those saying goodbye advanced to the family crypt. Everyone was dressed in white. Those close to the ruler also had their heads covered. Lu Jun walked ahead of the column, and behind were all the other ministers and ambassadors of neighboring empires. Having reached the cemetery gate, Yuan Hong suddenly decides not to go further. But he is asked to stay because he must help open the gates for the prince, because the young man's level is not so strong. The first elder laughed loudly and said that if he could not handle this on his own, then he was not worthy to enter the crypt at all. He said it loudly so that everyone could hear. Lu Jun held back as best he could. Chun Guan was also quick to put in his 2 cents. He called the heir a useless prince who cannot open the stone gate. There were jeers behind him. The fat man couldn't wait for the ambassador from the lion race to arrive to deal with the young prince's friends. Meanwhile, Lu Jun tried his best to open the gate, and again his chains began to appear on his hands. The young man tensed and began to push the gate. The efforts were rewarded, and the huge doors began to yield to the young man. Everyone expected the entrance to be completely opened. The residents of the city were amazed at the prince's persistence, and his friends admired his courage. Only the guy with the umbrella knew how hard Lu Jun was. The guy was very tense, realizing that no one could help him. His wounds made themselves known again, and he bit the hem of his clothes even harder. His hands were helped by his chain vines. Finally, the gates opened and everyone could see a carved circular road, and at the end, an island with a stone crematorium. Nearby, the same stones on which distant relatives of the monkey dynasty rested were floating in the air. Below, there was an abyss into the sky. As soon as Lu Jun's hands were freed, the chains began to wrap around the coffin of the deceased, and the young man spoke to his father as if he were alive. The guy asked him to follow him. In the crowd, the young geniuses were jealous. Why did he enter? But they couldn't, because many were even stronger than him. But Gulan warned that anyone's soul would be destroyed if the person who entered was not a descendant of the king. Yuan Hong did not take his eyes off the prince. He wanted to remember this magical moment forever when the Lu Wuji line ceased to exist. The first elder had already buried Lu Jun in his thoughts. The guy pointed the coffin straight into the high slab. The king's initials immediately appeared on it, which meant that he had taken his final place and his journey was over. Lu Jun returned to the gate and bowed down. The young man could not believe that his return was exactly like this. The prince had only one oath in his head, to avenge his father. The farewell dragged on, and as he bowed, he hit his forehead again. There was blood, which remained on the road. After this, Lu Jun begins to notice that the circular path begins to turn. The young man loses his balance and manages to grab the edge with his hand so as not to fall into the sky. It becomes increasingly difficult to hold on with one hand. Your fingers dig into sharp stones and become covered in blood. The young heir begins to notice that this pillar is sucking his blood. Then he decides to let go of his hand and hold himself with chain vines. The circular road begins to crumble, and Lu Jun realizes that it is an artifact of Da Huang. On the pillar, he notices an encrypted inscription. The King of Beasts will ascend to the throne. He is capable of changing destinies. The 4 sides will find peace when the beasts come to the source. Everyone was tired of waiting outside the gate, but no one left because they wanted to know whether Lu Jun was still alive. Will he come back out? In the midst of all this bedlam, a guy with an umbrella, actually his name was Sanjia, was attracted by a water otter. She beckoned the ambassador of the Kunpeng race to come and listen to her. The animal told its owner the news that he had managed to find Sun Haya, the headman, who had gone on a different route. He got into trouble, and now the robbers are subjecting the old man to terrible torture. Left alone with herself, Xiao Kai thought about why her sister sent her here. The girl had to find the formula for the artifact. As soon as she thought about this, her chest area suddenly became warmer. It was her amulet that was activated, and if this happened, then the formula was available. All 4 artifacts will begin to vibrate. The girl told the she-wolf to start searching for Dahuang. Sanjia had almost reached the right place when he felt that his umbrella, for no reason, began to emit light and heat. But he decided not to be distracted from his intended goal. The robbers' fortress was located on Heavenly Monkey Mountain. Their houses were built along a cliff where the wind always blows and there is little greenery. The usual inhabitants of this place are black crows. The exhausted elder was tied down. He could no longer even hold his head up. But he managed to hear that he was bait in order to deal with the prince. The gates of the fortress fell, and a guy with an umbrella stood in the doorway. The robbers spent so much time and effort trying to lure the heir into a trap, but it was all in vain. Sanjia was calm. He told the headman that he had come to pick him up. But he, gathering the rest of his strength, shouted that it was a trap and he should save himself. As soon as the guy heard that it was an ambush, a barrier began to appear around him. The young man did not yet see who his enemy was, but he protected himself with his dome. Words came from behind that Lu Jun was again disappointing with his presence. But the dragon's army didn't care about the prince anymore. The robber asked, "Who came to them?" And behind the gates of the family crypt, the main character has not yet come to his senses. He lay motionless on the pillar, which had stopped drinking his blood. Xiao Kai was unable to find the artifact. She began to notice that her amulet had stopped glowing. This meant that the formula had disappeared. Having excellent hearing, the girl realized that she was being followed. It was not difficult for her to figure out the maniac. She threw him to the ground and demanded that he confess who hired him. Sunhaya shouted to the robber that the ambassador should not be killed, because then the prince's revenge would be very terrible. The old man begged Sanjia to quickly save only himself. However, the villain did not listen to him. Yuan Song heard that the victims were ready to face their death and sent the lightning dragon of destruction at his targets. He was truly ready to kill them. Unexpectedly for everyone, the trap was instantly neutralized and now Sanjia could stand up for itself. And the dragon was attacked by the snow wolf. Another participant wanted to join the battle. The wolf girl did not follow the Kunpeng ambassador. She purely by chance found herself in the epicenter of events. Finally, Lu Jun woke up. He thought that if not for the chains, the pillar would have sucked out all the blood. The young man didn't yet realize that he was sitting on a huge hand. No one would have thought that Fan Kun's legendary weapon was in such a place. Moreover, the blood of the heir can awaken the artifact. With its help, you can easily become a king or even an emperor. And now Lu Jun has it. The guy will definitely be able to avenge the death of his father. The hand on which the young man was moved, and the prince saw that a large golden monkey was staring at him. He was immediately reminded of a childhood memory of his father's vein in the form of the same monkey. The giant animal roared very terribly. It was noticeable that it was completely unfriendly. Lu Jun summoned the red chains to protect himself. Realizing that this was not enough, the prince called the wriggling dragon so that he too would tie up the mad beast. The young heir didn't think that Fan Kun would look like this. The chains that appeared were torn again and again by the golden monkey, like thin threads. Lu Jun flew into the air and began to direct another dragon, hornless, at the animal. He was ready to do anything to pacify the obstinate animal. Only the chains could not cope. The blue dragon flew down and the writhing snake was torn in half. Lu Jun thought that he had not had such a strong opponent for a long time. The golden monkey dealt with all the attackers quite spectacularly. The young man always had the mark of a writhing dragon on his shoulder, but now it began to disappear. Having dealt with everyone, the beast glared at the prince. Realizing that he was now alone with Fan Kun and had even lost his ability, Lu Jun shouted as much as he could and slammed his foot on the rocks. Imagine his surprise when the beast repeated the same movements after him and, after doing this, dropped to the same level as the young man. Lu Jun thought that since he arrived in his hometown, his strength was constantly being tested. The battle was becoming interesting because he was just warming up and had not yet given his full strength. The guy gathered all his spiritual power to send the giant ape flying. With his arms out in front, he picked up speed as he approached the animal. But when his power was so powerful that it shook the void and Lu Jun fell into the space between the ancestral land and the outer world. He saw his dragon, which was pulled into the body of the golden monkey. That pillar has appeared again, emitting the Monkey King's explosive power. This pillar acts on the blood of the young man. The fire snakes are inside the prince, reducing his level limit by half. But now they want to meet. The black dragon was male, came from Lu Jun. The red one was female, was from the monkey. And they came out of their habitat to connect. There was a bright flash. And then the hearts of the prince and the golden monkey were intertwined in chains through which their blood was mixed. The hero began to experience terrible pain. His face became like a monkey's face. His clothes were all torn. The young man's body tried with all its might to reject the new changes. In his hand, he held a staff, a Fangkun artifact that he had once found in the desert during his travels. This attribute is one of the 4 weapons that help awaken invincible power. Meanwhile, in the fortress of the robbers, the wolf girl began to understand that Yuan Song was like a pea against a wall. He seemed to enjoy being in pain. The elder and Sanjia tried different ways to dissuade the villain. After all, the first headman will not be on the throne because the heir has returned. But Yuan Song insisted that the great Yuan Hong had thought of everything long ago, and the monkey clan had no longer obeyed the Lu family for many years. Tired of listening to the traitor, Sun Haya was going to do what was fair and take the enemy's life. But the robber had a backup plan. Yuan Song swallowed a pill that instantly turned him into a mad monkey. The traitor hit the ground and a crack began to appear, which separated the guys from the mountain. Evil Eyes rushed to remember how the plan still failed and everyone would be killed. He suggested not to interfere in the affairs of the first elder. All 3 and Volchina flew down the cliff, straight onto sharp stones that were covered with water from the flowing waterfall. Inevitable death awaited them. The unsuspecting Lu Jun now received Fan Kun, and the 2 became one. And the staff immediately acquired 2 inhabitants of the paired dragons. The young man gave up part of his vitality in return, but now he has become a wild golden monkey. In the distance, he noticed a cloud similar to an umbrella, which meant that Sanjia's brother was in trouble. Yuan Feng approached his father and said that everything went according to plan. They took the bait. The elder stood at the entrance to the crypt and thought that now the prince was left without the support of the southern sea and the northern region. Yuan Hong was now sure that the young heir could not defeat him. But the next minute, all his hopes for the throne collapsed. The gates of the cemetery opened and a ball flew out like a bright sun. Descending from the mountain, Yuan Song went to the place where his enemies were supposed to crash. The magic pill stopped working and he no longer looked so strong. The robber stood exhausted because the pill had completely released his spiritual power. He waited for the corpses to float up, but instead the water began to swirl and rise like a tornado. At a great height, the column of water disintegrated into a 9-headed water serpent. Of course, no one died. Sanjia decided to deal with the villain, and Xiao Kai and the northern wolf saved the old man. The girl was wet to the skin, but this did not stop her from admiring the pet of the ambassador of the Kunpeng race. She was very advanced and knew about every ability you could think of. And now, like a crazy fan, she wanted to get this snake into her collection. But in response, she heard that he was going to kill her. The she-wolf grabbed the elder in his teeth because he still had not recovered from his fall from the cliff. And Xiao Kai sat on her back and they began to run away towards the forest. The girl thought that there was no water there, which meant that the distraught ambassador could not harm them. But the element of water turned out to be very fast. One of the snakes had already wrapped itself around her. Xiao Kai guessed that the guy with the umbrella not only has a concentration of spiritual energy, but also something similar to an artifact, because his power is enormous. The girl felt the warmth from her amulet again and thought that the Sanjia umbrella and her artifact were resonating. But he was not interested in this. He waved his hand, making it clear to his water dweller that he would finish with them for now. Lu Jun's help arrived in time. He looked different from before, held a staff in his hand, and was in the company of a huge golden monkey. The young man bombarded the girl with questions. But he was attracted by the fact that her amulet was glowing, just like his cane. She told the prince how it all happened, and after what events the ambassador of Sanjia went mad and began to see enemies in everyone. But Lu Jun knew how to calm his sworn brother. After all, the guy with the umbrella spent his whole life in the water, and now he's just a little nervous that he's not in his environment. It wasn't a problem, but Xiao Kai still asked, so that he would be careful. Having secured himself a little, Lu Jun began to approach Sanjia. When the prince's energy touched the ambassador, his eyes stopped glowing with evil. He said his name and extended his hand, clenched into a fist in the direction of his friend. He seemed to come to his senses and repeated the movement of the prince's hand. The brothers met and their attributes glowed even brighter. Sanjia returned to its normal state. Returning to the others, Lu Jun saw that Xiao Kai had healed the old man. He thanked her, and she was glad that he had saved her too. Only one Kunpeng ambassador looked a little distant. Not long ago, he found a common language with the she-wolf, but she again bared her teeth in his direction. Sunhaya was in a hurry to hurry everyone to leave, otherwise they would not be able to avoid meeting the first elder. Father and son were already on Heavenly Monkey Mountain. They found neither prisoner nor prince there. Great Yuan Hong clenched his fist and thought that he had underestimated the young heir. He vented his anger by hitting a stone. The elder was really looking forward to tomorrow's king selection ceremony at which he was going to ascend to the throne. And when this happens, he will tear Lu Jun to pieces. The throne room in the palace was full of visitors. Each ambassador had his own separate place. The ceremony is about to begin, you just have to wait for those who are late. Lu Jun couldn't get drunk. After yesterday, he was terribly dry. The fat man waved his hand importantly. He saw no point in waiting for Goldie. Everyone was talking about the strictest law on the continent. It turns out that even if you are of royal blood, but with a low ability score, you cannot lay claim to the throne. The ambassador of the Golden Lion race also came for these conversations. He opened the doors impressively, had rich hair on his head, a tattoo was visible on his chest, and a gold belt in the shape of a lion's head was on his belt. Xiao Kai saw what her pursuer looked like. He searched and did not find her with the second prince. It turns out that the girl was hiding in the city of Heavenly Path all this time. The fat man quickly ran up to him and began to say how bored he was. And he, in turn, apologized for making his dear brother worry. The boar began to invite Goldie to sit down, when suddenly the lion saw Prince Lu Jun and asked if it was him. The hero answered positively. Hearing this, the king of beasts released his animal to show what was waiting for the young man, calling him self-confident because the heir dared to speak to the ambassador without getting up. Lu Jun's enemies perked up as they added another ally against the prince. Yuan Hong thought that now the southern seas and northern region would not fight the Boar Emperor. But the guy replied that this is the land of the monkey race and he is not allowed to command here. He also summoned the golden monkey to the throne room. They, like children, compared their toys to see who had the coolest. Meanwhile, everyone present saw what kind of weapon Lu Jun possessed. Suddenly, the second elder begins to cough. This distracts the guys from demonstrating their powers. The prince approaches the old man. Gu Lan asks to begin the coronation. He told the great Yuan Hong that the young heir's abilities were sufficiently demonstrated to ascend to the throne. But he replied that Lu Jun was not a purebred monkey. Sunhaya could no longer stand it. He jumped up from his seat and began shouting that the heir was the late child of the king. But the first elder was referring to the unknown origin of the prince's mother. It was decided to test the young man in the ancient tower, which opens every 4 years. The guy needed to be in the top 10. That would be enough for the coronation. These are mandatory traditions when choosing the king of a race, and if he does not go through them, it means he is not worthy of becoming a leader. The great elder openly mocked the prince. He claimed that the guy would be afraid to even enter the training tower. But Lu Jun was confident in his abilities. He would exceed the requirements of the meeting and not only enter the top 10, but become the first. The young man thought that there would be a fair competition for the throne. But he was deeply mistaken, because the son of the first elder was already thinking about how to make sure that the prince would never leave this tower. The western wasteland is covered with snow. The White Tiger Palace is built on the rocks and no one is visible on the premises. Master Bouquet was sitting on the roof. He was busy with an important investigation. In one hand, he held an egg, in the other, a chicken. There was real commotion below. The elder was looking for a secluded place to hide. He opened the doors and tried to get in, but who was he hiding from? They began to tell him that there was no more room, but the old man was guided by the rule. In cramped conditions, but not in offense. He ordered everyone to move because the master was already on his way. Master Bouquet walked through the yard looking for at least someone. The doors of one of the barns were broken, and when they collapsed, court servants fell out. It looked strange. But this did not bother the young man at all. He was in a hurry to ask an important question. Hearing that stupid curiosity awaits them again, shouting, "Help!" they began to run away in different directions. The elder turned out to be the slowest. Bouquet voiced his question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The old man said that he knew where he could get answers to many questions. The elder told the young master about the existence of the training tower. There, the sons and daughters of each race gathered to unite for training. Young geniuses develop their skills and thereby increase the honor of their clans. In addition to the 4 royal clans, there are the dog, frog, and crane races. The fortress was supposed to open very soon. The young man really liked this proposal. He couldn't wait to join the ranks of the rest of his brothers and sisters. Everyone was eager to get the young little guy out of the palace as soon as possible. Handing over the amigas, the elder asked Bouquet not to lose face. The old man bitterly stated that the emperor of the Golden Lion race had robbed them, subjected them to torture, and was still continuing to humiliate the White Tiger race. And now, there is only hope for the young master. After all, if he manages to reach first place in the training tower, it will be a sign for the other races, and everyone will begin to fear tigers. Bouquet understood the responsibility that was entrusted to him and hoped that this was a competition of wits, not force. If it happens as he thought, then there will be no problems. Then there was a tearful scene. Everyone was sobbing demonstratively as if they were very sorry that the master was leaving them for so long. The young man asked his brothers to wait for him. Closing the gate behind him, the servants began to celebrate that the master had left and quiet days had finally arrived. They praised the smart elder and wished him long life. Young Bouquet outlined his path, adjusted his amigasa, and headed straight to the training tower. He was very optimistic because he had the best support group on the entire continent. In the southern part of the tropical forest, among the palm trees lived a race of red-eyed frogs. Today, its inhabitants came to the pedestal of their queen to send Her Highness to the competition. The powerful ruler demonstrated her strength to people, and they devotedly wished her victory. After all, it was necessary to prove to many that she was the master of the forest and return everything that she had lost. The path of the Frog Queen passed through her main enemy. In the northern part of the southern rainforest lived the black race. Jiang Man lived on the highest tree. Surrounded by his cold-blooded friends, he loved to peer into the distance to track down his prey. And just at this time, he noticed that Yun Wu had left her territory. He realized that she was heading to the tournament in the tower and calling the entire race of the red-eyed frog losers. He was also preparing to take part in the competition. And hoping that the other opponents would not disappoint him, Jiang Man released the wings of his Python Sea and flew in the footsteps of Queen Yun Wu. The South Sea was rough. On Divine Crane Island, all preparations were ready. Liu Feng was left to hone his skills. He doesn't need support. In order to test your strength, you need to find a real opponent who is in no way inferior to the warrior himself. Taking his weapon in his hands, he released his white wings and flew over the sea in search of a second participant for the duel. In the northern region, where the Wolf Fortress is, the right to participate in competitions is much more serious. There are a lot of applicants, but they go through an intermediate selection. Anyone who cannot resist loses, and his chance to enter the tower is cancelled. The elder carefully monitors that everything is according to the rules and loudly counts down from 10. An experienced mentor scattered everyone who so dreamed of going to training. Already at the number 5, none of the contestants moved. The guy folded his arms across his chest in a businesslike manner, thinking that he had done it. But among the pile of beaten youths, there was one pretender. It turned out to be Go Dahu. The guy lay face down and waited for the elder to finish counting. The deceiver was even afraid to raise his face to see how things were with the rest of the young masters, but he was afraid to give himself away. I had to cheer myself up with the thought that the end was soon. The elder finished the competition, and the winner was about to leave the ring when he heard behind him that he had lost. Turning around, he saw Go Dahu briskly dancing a victory dance. The young man was dressed in a warm hat with ear flaps with cute ears, and instead of a belt, he had a trixie, a toy for dogs in the form of a rope, tied around him. The sly man deceived his mentor by performing a tactical feint. The fighter began to be loudly indignant. He did not understand how he managed to hide from the dog's excellent scent. And the elder stated that imitation of death is also a skill. In the end, he allowed Go Dahu to go to the training tower. The insanely joyful dog ran without wasting time. He dreamed not only of participating, but also of finding his soulmate there. But the training tower was not just a lonely building, it was an entire ancient city. It was very crowded only every 4 years. The guys were glad that they managed to get to the place. And at the entrance, demonstrations of their abilities from different participants had already begun. Yun Wu made a spectacular appearance. The Toad Queen landed so that the Sky Crane's feathers flew out from all directions. The alarmed bird called the contestant a small frog. She looked from above and thought how insignificant the forces were gathered here. I was glad that without abilities, many would not pass the selection. Hearing such arrogance, many became indignant. But Liu Feng offered to fight immediately and then the entrance was open. But he quickly changed his mind because it was not worth wasting energy ahead of time. Lu Jun appeared nearby, followed by the rest of the guys. The heir of the monkeys ordered the bird not to put on airs because not so long ago he was beaten in the South Sea. And Liu Feng really fell silent. After all, Sky Crane didn't really want the details to be revealed so publicly. They had disagreements. Seeing Lu Jun with Sanjia, he became even more angry. Pulling out his weapon, the bird guy was about to take the red chain. But the monkey guy got it with his own hands and refused him. The young man openly called Crane a boy and said that he could not get anything. An angry Liu Feng prepared to strike, shouting that the corpse monkey went to attack. The golden monkey was also not far behind. The prince grabbed his staff and swung it to hit the flying crane hard. There will be no mercy in this battle! The two forces would definitely have met if they had not been swallowed up by the head of the huge blue tiger. The beast's face opened its mouth and simply sucked in the blows of both masters. A sea of thoughts flashed through the heads of those gathered. But this beast was stronger than all of them because it stopped the attack right in the air. Liu Feng became indignant. Who was he to interfere in their affairs? But the calm referee introduced himself as Bu Kei from the White Tiger Palace. The guy asked not to kill each other and live peacefully. One of the participants shouted that the ancient training tower was open. And everyone slowly moved towards her, forgetting about the previous situation. The fortress hung in space and was held by magic chains. As soon as the opening time came, lightning began to shoot from the tower. A portal opened high in the sky and powerful spirits began to emerge from there. The flame-eating demonic boar and the dark depths demon like a blue moray eel glided through the air towards the tower. And behind them were the 9-headed golden lion and the moon-swallowing heavenly wolf. The 4 beasts descended to open the tower gate together. These were considered the most powerful animals on the continent. Some participants in the competition saw them as their little brothers. Lu Jun stood and dreamed of how he would soon bring back the mystical beast of the monkey race. Bu Kei was also angry because his animal protector was not here. The master noticed a guy with a staff not far from him. He suggested that we unite and start making friends. Having heard a positive answer, he began to bombard his new friend with questions. Wai Buke loaded Lu Jun with his questions, and Liu Feng watched this whole picture from the side. Meanwhile, real magic was happening near the tower. It began to rain coins. It fell directly on the competition participants. Each young genius will receive 1 starting jade medal, and the one who wins the most awards will take first place. Those who had already caught their first small victory could climb the training tower. The she-wolf turned out to be too old for the entrance to the training tower to be open to her. The beast spoke in a human voice and asked Lu Jun to take care of Xiao Kai. The first test awaited the guys. They had to withstand the pressure of the tower, which with tremendous force lifted them inside. The landing was hard. Once there, Lu Jun did not immediately understand where he was. Everything looked the same as in the ordinary world. The young man stood in the middle of the jungle, and his own life was in full swing around him. Small animals went about their business. Some examined the arriving guest. Behind him, the hero heard a crash. He turned around and saw a healthy baobab tree breaking, forming a crack on the trunk. The tree came to life. With its roots, it wanted to trample the air of the ape race. The young man, like a grasshopper, jumped up and down, dodging the endless blows of the clumsy enemy. Lu Jun jumped up and struck with his staff. He didn't want to prolong the battle. The rotten wood creaked and broke into pieces. After the victory, the wood crystal hung in the air. This is a bonus for young genius. The young man stretched out his hand and caught it. He thought that it would be difficult to find a diamond of similar clarity anywhere else. Lu Jun realized that the tower separated all the participants in the competition, and he decides to regroup and begins to look for a suitable place. The sounds of blows reached the young man. Nearby, two masters staged a duel. One of them was stronger than the other and tried to squeeze out the start medal. The loser was already ready to give it away. The winner was going to not only take the coin, but also leave a wet spot on the victim. Gathering his powers, he was ready to deliver the fatal blow. But he was prevented by Lu Jun's staff, which stood between the duelists. This switched attention from the lying guy to the prince, because now it was possible to take away not one, but two medals. He said that everyone in the tower should be destroyed, but in response, he heard from our hero that then he would have to die. The enemy turned out to be from the heavenly rhinoceros race, challenging the heir of Lu Jun to a fight to see if he could fight as well as be sarcastic. The young man was already preparing his answer. Having promised to defeat him with one blow of his fist, the guy heard that he would soon regret what he said, because the guy with a ponytail was confident of his victory. With loud insults, he sent a thunderbolt towards the young master. But he was already ready. He was not going to let his guard down even for a minute while in the training tower. Knowing the effect everyone gets when they see his golden monkey, the young man summoned his spirit beast to help in the usual manner. All the witnesses to this battle were surprised. As promised, Lu Jun made Rhinoceros with one hit. Observing this scene, unnoticed by everyone, was a red-haired girl who had half taken on the appearance of Sangia. The defeated master could not bear the pain. He handed his coin to the winner because those were the rules of the competition. The master was happy as long as luck was on his side. Lu Jun did not forget to take the starting medal for the rescue because he does not work for free. Sangia emerged from the thicket of the forest, whom the heir was glad to see. The young man looked at his friend, but something was wrong about him. The guy said he was glad to have such a meeting, because he was just about to go in search of the dear ambassador of the Kunpeng race. He suggested that his brother go look for Xiao Zhao and turned his back to the new Sangia. Suddenly, the guy with the umbrella turned into a muscular red fox who extended his claws to attack. Still not cooled down by the rhino, the fist flew at the cunning cheat. The girl hit a tree and immediately took on her real form. The beast could not understand how she gave herself away because her disguise was perfect. He really couldn't see the real her, but Sangia doesn't talk that well. This is what stopped her. The fox took a moment to catch her breath, and Lu Jun was interested in why she reincarnated as his friend. But she jumped to her feet and started running. He's behind her. They were carried to the edge of the crater. The volcano was active. This was evident from the hot lava that gurgled inside. The guy caught up with the girl and continued to interrogate her about Sangia, but she replied that she had nothing to do with this ambassador and that her goal was to deliver the master to this particular place. Having finished speaking, she said goodbye and threw herself into the boiling lava. After her, Yuan Fang appeared, who had already waited for Lu Jun. He surrounded the young man with a magic cage and ordered him to kneel. The hero was ready for all battles because he needed to achieve first place. The guy swung his staff and destroyed the circles of the cage, but he met with a new blow from the son of the great elder. The prince also summoned the golden monkey so that he would not be bored for a long time without doing anything. Yuan Fang thought, where did the hero get such a staff that suppressed the blow of his ancestral sword? The enemy said that one of them must die today. He had no choice but to take an instant magic pill, because otherwise the prince would become the biggest threat on the path to the throne. A huge white monkey, Fei Xiong, immediately appeared behind him. Who would have imagined that people of the same race would fight against each other? Lu Jun had to be careful. There was a cliff behind him. If it weren't for the pill, maybe our hero would have won. But for now, he was flying from the cliff, straight onto the sharp stones washed by the fast current. But he was not destined to die, not now, because the body of the young man was picked up by the water serpent. Yes, it was Sanjia, and he was here. Before he could thank him for his salvation, Lu Jun noticed the strange behavior of his spirit animal. His golden monkey, for some unknown reason, began to go wild. Not far from the volcano, there was a wolf girl. She looked at her amulet, which lit up, and thought that the prince and the guy with the umbrella were somewhere very close. But she was distracted from her search by a cry for help. A guy in a winter hat with ear flaps with cute ears ran out of the bushes on Xiaokai. She recognized the young man as Go Dahu from the Northern Leica race. The stone Terminator was chasing him. The girl helped the guy win and get rid of his pursuer. The loving puppy glowed with happiness that he met Her Highness here. But they had an agreement to call her by her name outside the house. Xiaokai returned to her necklace. Touching the amulet, she looked for where Sanjia and Lu Jun could be, because her intuition suggested that they were in great danger. Cutting off the heads of the water serpent with his ancestral sword, the son of the great elder shouted at the representative of the Kunpeng race. How dare he prevent him from killing the heir of the monkeys? The furious Yuan Fang was going to test how long the guy with the umbrella would last, because the snake had been defeated. The poor young man was bleeding from the mouth. He had only protection, and he surrounded himself with a dome using an umbrella. Sanjia thought that this was the end as Yuan Fang swung to end everything with a fatal blow. But he was thwarted again. The elder son will soon run out of effect from the pill, and he hasn't killed anyone yet. Xiaokai made it just in time, but the girl was not alone. The girl told Go Dahu to help defeat the participant, and she was going to go down to Lu Jun, who showed no signs of life. The frisky dog asked Sanjia to rest, because his participation was not necessary, because the guy in the ear flaps was going to quickly finish everything. But it turned out to be not easy. The girl looked at the glowing staff in the young man's hands and realized that this was Fan Kun. Finally, she managed to find him. But things were not going well for the prince himself, because the golden monkey was devouring Lu Jun. He no longer looked like himself. She began to call her sister. Xiaokai explained to the spirit of her relative that she needed to save the prince. Otherwise, he would be left without power. Having received the hint, the wolf girl began to direct the light from the amulet to the young man. She was glad that the prince would now be saved. After all, his essence is intertwined with Fan Kun, and, due to his inexperience, he needs help to cope with it. The once-aged Lu Jun stopped trembling and returned to his aged appearance. And the staff stopped emitting the causing red power. The snakes living in it also calmed down. The young heir woke up and saw Xiaokai in front of him, who was finishing casting a spell on him with her amulet. The guy realized that she saved him by spending all her strength. Seeing that everything worked out, she fell to the ground exhausted. He looked at Fan Kun, seeing that the staff had changed and now had red chains added to it. And then a vision happened. Xiaokai's sister became a victim of his weapon, and now the girl is on the verge of death because of him. Meanwhile, the frantic screams of Yuan Fang, who was tired of tolerating the other participants, could be heard from above. He shouted that his target was Lu Jun and tried to drive out the guy with the umbrella. But Sanjia refused to leave. The son of the great elder had no choice but to kill the ambassador of the Kunpeng race. He prepared to attack the guy's protective dome, but then the heir to the throne appeared. The prince thanked his brother and asked him to take care of Xiaokai. Yuan Fang dreamed of finishing off the young man as quickly as possible. But the prince was not going to give up so easily, much less give everything to his father. But the enemy is also not going to lose. He decides that one pill is not enough and swallows a second one. However, Lu Jun is calm. He understands that even all the pills in the world will still not make him the first. The white monkey's eyes were bloodshot. The unstoppable force in his hands was tearing Yuan Feng's clothes. He shouted that he would kill everyone who stood in the way of his throne. Lu Jun was angry with the entire First Elder's family. The young man could not understand how they had the courage to claim the crown if they could only increase their strength through pills. The golden monkey, after evolution, became even more powerful. He bought himself armor and now did not stand naked, but looked like a real warrior. The white monkey wanted to attack the prince with a tsunami strike, but he swung his staff and threw the enemy away. The furious Yuan Feng screamed in anger. He was able to hold on and not fall into the abyss. Behind him lay Go Dahu, who was feigning death. The guy was waiting, and now he had a chance to take part in the battle. He suddenly jumped up and bit the eldest son on the hand. It turned out to be painful. After a series of failures, he decides to run away without completing his goal, promising himself that next time victory will not be on Lu Jun's side. And Go Dahu rejoiced, because after his bite, the enemy disappeared. It was already calm on the ocean shore. The water snake caught fish for his master and his friends. There was a fire burning on the shore where food was being prepared. Sanjia turned around to put in a new fish and noticed that someone was stealing the catch. Seeing that the guy with the umbrella is trying to explain something to him, the guy reminds him how tiring it was to save them all. But the fisherman only wanted to warn that raw fish would be poisoned. Left alone, the prince thanks the wolf girl for saving him. She tells him that she is doing this in order to find Fan Kun, who will help fix her moon talisman. It was one of the 4 great artifacts. The guy saw how her amulet and staff resonated. He decided to help the girl, despite the risk. She didn't expect such an answer. They were prevented from finishing their sentence by terrible screams. Go Dahu ran towards them, shouting that he was poisoned and begging Xiao Kai to heal him. But she was in no hurry to help him, fearing that it was contagious. Next came Sanjia. In his hand, he held a bitten fish. Lu Jun laughed loudly and patted Dog on the head. He guessed that he had eaten raw fish. The prince reassured the poor man. He warned him what to expect from him. Otherwise, he, of course, would not die. Hearing this, Go Dahu apologized for the unnecessary trouble and hurried to run into the bushes. The sky crane was doing its best to get rid of weak competitors in order to quickly move on to its main enemy. He heard footsteps approaching and decided not to hide his weapon yet. The warrior waited for the man to emerge from the darkness. What a surprise Liu Feng was when he saw the half-naked son of the great elder of the monkey race. He looked ragged. He had a proposal for Crane. Seeing the interest in his eyes, the long-haired youth proposed to team up to defeat Lu Jun. But this idea seemed unworkable to Liu Feng, and he was about to leave when he heard that Yuan Feng was also offended by the air of the monkeys. And together, they will have a greater chance of success. The crane assessed the speaker again. He humiliated him by saying that he would not team up with a genius of such a low level as his. The eldest son was running out of patience. He began to make excuses that he would certainly have killed the golden monkey if he had been alone. But since he had assistance in the person of Sanjia, Xiao Kai, and not so long ago, Go Dahu was also added. This means that they should also become friends. Yuan Feng no longer knew how to interest the young man. Liu Feng still decided to leave, but he hinted that he agreed to an alliance. A thoughtful Yun Wu walked along the shore. The queen collected materials that could be used to increase her strength against Jiang Man. She was attracted by the hissing. Turning her head, she saw how the king's snake is going to attack her. The girl immediately pulled out her blade, and now only 2 halves remained of the snake. It was not just a coincidence. Her enemy was already looking at Yun Wu from the tree. Jiang Man complimented the queen that she had become stronger than her sister. He mocked the girl, saying that when he absorbed her relative, he became the head of the black python. This was the last straw for her ears. She had lost to him before, but today she was going to kill Jiang Man. Clutching the dagger in her hand, she went on the attack. And at that time, the snake that was slithering down his hand turned into a whip. He thought how stupid she was. The food itself went into his mouth. He wondered how much stronger he would become when he swallowed this frog. Strangling with a whip, like the tongue of a snake, he tried to catch his prey in this way, but she managed to dodge and disappear from the predator's field of vision. The queen had outwitted her opponent and was now about to attack him from behind. But it was difficult because the python smelled her there too. He hit Yun Wu and the girl fell to the ground. Zhang Man became even stronger and was no match for the red-eyed frog's vanishing punch. The winner rejoiced. He went down to his victim. There was a smile on his face that began to stretch more and more. He now looked exactly like his spirit beast. The python hissed that the frog race's destiny was to become his dinner. Zhang Man's plan was to swallow the queen, but she had a secret weapon that she could only use as a last resort. But she did not have time to do anything because the water snake intervened in the fight. He threw the python straight into the tree. Next to the frog queen stood Sanjia, and behind him was the nine-headed sea dweller. The girl did not expect such a turn of events, and the hungry python thought that he was lucky. He hissed with delight because eating a guy with an umbrella was cooler than some bony toad. He managed to bite off only one head of the heavenly serpent when he realized that he could not cope. When the remaining firebrands attack him, Zhang Man decides to flee. Otherwise, he will lose and he will have to leave the training tower. Go Dahu saw this scene from the side. He felt much better, and he praised the guys for doing the right thing, for following his example. He considered himself simply a hero. Realizing that the threat had passed, Yun Wu stopped the guy with the umbrella. There were tears in my eyes. She asked if he remembered her. The beast realm in the northern region, on the outskirts of Cloud City, was crowded. It was market day, and all the residents were in a hurry to buy food. Suddenly the guard began to shout for everyone to make way, because the second prince of the Golden Lion race had arrived in the city. The guard waved a sharp spear to make everyone move. Jin Xiao walked next. He was heading to the grave of his dead father. The guy always shared his ups and downs with him. He complained to the tombstone that he had been unable to track down the Wolf Queen for 2 months. Rumors have reached her that she is in the training tower, but the prince does not pass by age. But Jin Xiao had a magic hourglass, which was given to his father by the hermit. With the help of them, he can move whenever and wherever he wants. Xiao Kai will have to give him the moonstone. Raising the artifact above his head, the young man opened the atmosphere and disappeared. He clearly wanted to prove to everyone that he was the best heir for the Golden Lion race. And in the tower, Lu Jun was busy restoring his girlfriend's strength. He took out a water crystal from a huge octopus, which increased the girl's strength. Xiao Kai watched her friend. She realized that her help was not needed yet. The girl praised the prince that now he will definitely be able to become the first in the competition and take the throne of the Monkey King. But the young man's goal was higher. He wanted to become the emperor of an entire city. Hearing this, the wolf girl told how she was weak and could not help her sister. That's why it's difficult to be an emperor. The young man was not ready for such revelations. He consoled the girl by giving her the crystal and asked her to be more diligent and, most importantly, not to be sad. Lu Jun sat down next to her to guard her until she recovered when he noticed a strange island in the water. Who's bored and has nothing to do? It turned out to be the top of the bald head of a witch from the tiger race. He quickly emerged from the depths, saying that their secret meeting had been discovered. He was also interested in what they were looking for in the sea. Lu Jun did not like Bouquet's invasion. He ordered him to shut up because Xiao Kai had not fully recovered. He even had to cover her ears because he refused to shut up. They were quickly joined by Yun Wu and Sanjia with Go Dahu. All were old acquaintances. Now there were 6 of them, and they were about to celebrate this meeting when their plans were interrupted by a bright glow. In my opinion, they were never destined to relax. The atmosphere began to open right above the guys. Lightning struck from it, and where the lightning touched the ground, a tree began to grow quickly. The bonsai continued to grow, but the guys were missing the wolf girl. She was put in a golden cage by the second prince of the Golden Lion race, who went to the training tower. Xiao Kai called Lu Jun for help. He could not reach the cage and began shouting for her to wait for him. The guy got excited and missed the fiery gaze from Jin Xiao. How could this happen? The bonsai continued to rise into the sky, Lu Jun stubbornly grabbed the branches. He climbed up to quickly free his girlfriend. On one of the flights, the young man saw that a lot of restorative resources were growing on the tree. He probably heard about it from his father in childhood. Lu Jun looked at all this beauty and thought that this was the legendary myriad tree. But he must hurry, because the funnel through which Jin Xiao passed has not yet disappeared. Something flashed on the prince's path. He immediately grabbed the staff. Someone hissed that he had swallowed enough crystals, and now his true form was creeping out. Black Python was glad that he had met a monkey with a heavenly stage. After all, if he swallowed it, he would enter the heavenly completion stage. But the young man shouted that he had no time for the snake. Lu Jun generally had no desire to get into a showdown with Zhang Man. He deftly bypassed the pestering enemy. He automatically turned around when he saw Python hit him in the face. Zhang Man took on his human form. He sat and wiped the blood off his face. The queen of the red-eyed frog race descended from the myriad branch. She has not dealt with her enemy, which means she will constantly seek meetings with him. The girl covered Lu Jun. She knew that he was rushing to Xiao Kai, and the prince wished her victory and climbed higher. At a great height, almost over the clouds, Jin Xiao threatened the girl in the cage. He ordered to give him his moonstone. The young man in golden armor showed her an hourglass. When the sand stops flowing into them, the second prince will leave the tower. The she-wolf looked at the artifact and realized that there was still plenty of time. The duel continued below. Maybe this was their last meeting. Well, how long could this endless enmity drag on? Jiang Man cursed her, and Yunwu was determined to end everything here and now. Clutching her dagger, she pounced on Python. Jiang Man continued to mock her. He called her frog dessert. She was furious because he had eaten so many of her people in order to become stronger. The serpent watched the queen approach. Then she disappeared, and the divine strike of the frog covered his head. The huge toad's paw crushed Zhang Man until black smoke came out. This was not the end, because he managed to resist her power and hide. The queen felt that he had slipped away and ordered him to show himself if he had the courage. Hearing his hiss, she realized that he was somewhere behind. The snake waited patiently while the frog tried all his weak tricks to end his victory beautifully. He said that it was better not to try to kill him, but she didn't seem to hear him. Now she wanted to launch the Crimson Eyes light arrow at the enemy. She hoped that her persistence would be rewarded because he could not be invincible. It was in vain that the python was not afraid of the toad. Having underestimated his opponent, he now paid in full. His eyes could not see, as if they had been burned by a strong laser that went through his entire head. Having fallen from a tree branch, Python rolled on the ground. It hurt like hell. He shouted how dare she hurt him because he was blind. Queen Yunwu could now approach her opponent without fear. And with the words, "Die Jiang Man," she cut off the head of the giant snake. Standing by the corpse, the girl was finally able to exhale. Tears welled up in her eyes. She couldn't believe she did it alone. I heard a familiar voice from behind. It was Jiang Man. He created the illusion of a black python and now held the girl tightly with the muscular body of the snake. It's a trap. No one can escape his mirage. He suggested being a good boy and accepting death with honor. But she wounded the snake with a dagger and the animal released her. She grouped herself. She was scared. Yunwu was ready. And Jiang Man rose above the queen and, opening his mouth, swallowed her whole. She flew headfirst. Looking around, she looked for the inner core of the black python. Finally, she managed to find the organ she needed. The flaming key high point transferred energy to its owner. The queen thought that if this core was destroyed, Jiang Man's life would end. As soon as she tried to approach the ball, the fire serpent appeared. He hissed that Yunwu was following in his sister's footsteps. After this, the snake again wanted to devour the frog. The girl's clothes began to burn. She did not want to be swallowed again, and now the time had certainly come for the secret weapon. Once upon a time, when Yunwu realized that she could not withstand the black python alone, she decided to turn to the Kunpeng race for help. Then she was lucky enough to meet Sanjia. He brought her the Ninghai pearl, which would tame the power of the black python. Seeing the gem, the fire snake was very scared. How could a mother of pearl crystal have had this effect on her? But he was not destined to find out this. After releasing Ning Hai, she seemed to sense her target and rushed to the very center of Qi Hai. The python let out a heart-rending death cry and fell dead. Finding herself alive again inside the training tower, Yun Wu could give free rein to her feelings. Now everything was definitely over. The girl was sure that in another world her sister was proud of her. Lu Jun, without stopping, climbed to the top of the tree. But he was distracted by cries for help. The prince decided to check what was the matter. He saw a man tied up on a giant web. It turned out to be Bu Kei. The young man approached the Y. He was wondering how he ended up in this position. It turned out that a crowd of creepy spiders attacked the young man and rolled him into a web, after which he found himself hanging upside down. Lu Jun reassured the northern tiger that he would help him free himself. The prince said that he would continue on his way to save Xiao Kai. But Bu Kei had a fear of spiders and didn't want to be alone. After making sure that all the insects were dead, he came to his senses a little. Meanwhile, Lu Jun was looking at one such long-legged one. He was amazed at its uniqueness because he had never encountered anything like this. Bu Kei started yelling again. Now he said that the prince had cheated by saying that he had killed all the insects because spiders were everywhere. At first there were few of them, but after a minute they crawled almost knee-deep. Later, the guys saw who was to blame for these centipedes. Bu Zhen really missed the bald guy. And while there was time, he carefully prepared such a reception for him. Lu Jun listened to the young man who was nestled in the spider flower, and there was something in common between him and Bu Kei. It was like they knew each other's phobias very well. It turned out that he is the first son of the northern tiger race. There was some mystery in the fact that he now began to engage in taming insects. Taking the carved pipe in his hands, Bu Zhen began to play. The centipedes began to line up to this melody. Each had its place in the total mass. When the solo concert ended, one could clearly see the head of a tiger assembled from insects. Lu Jun realized that this was a brotherly squabble. Bu Kei ordered not to interfere and go on to save the wolf. Oh well, in principle, the prince was going to do just that. There was no point in commanding so brazenly. The northern tiger wanted to deal with his relative in private, without unnecessary ears. The heir of the monkeys wished the guy good luck and said that she would be waiting for him at the top of the tree. Now no one bothered them. He called Bu Kei short. He couldn't wait to see how much his brother had grown in these 3 years. The main continent of beasts, western wasteland, snowy mountains. 2 teenagers are walking along a giant chain. Bu Kei sneaks ahead, followed by his older brother. The strong wind makes it difficult to look at your feet. Suddenly, Bu Zhen begins to fall into the abyss between the towers, but the younger one manages to grab his falling brother's hand. He pulls it out and the guys continue their test. After walking a little more, Bu Kei shouts that the fortress is already close. However, the second young man is not at all happy. He understands that he needs to win this campaign and he decides to sacrifice his brother. The master arranged this test to decide who would become the next palace master. If the 2 of them came together, they would be tested again. The White Tiger Palace will become Bu Zhen because he threw his younger brother into the abyss. He didn't even blink an eye because he believed that he was doing the right thing. Having shown that he is in place, the dishonest heir asks the master to announce the result. But the old man was in no hurry. He wanted the incense to burn to the end. Having obeyed, everyone began to wait. Time seemed to pass terribly slowly. Some of those present were worried that Bu Kei had not arrived yet. But the ruthless Bu Zhen was sure that he would never see his brother again. A hand reached out from the abyss. It was the junior master. The dishonest heir could not believe it because he saw with his own eyes how the young man flew into an endless abyss. While everyone was busy asking what happened on the way, Bu Zhen quietly extinguished the incense. And then he pointedly said that it was too bad that Bu Kei didn't make it in time. Nevertheless, they both appeared before the Lord to hear who would become the next master. Bu Kei's name was called. The elder brother was indignant. He got angry and left the White Tiger Palace forever. He disagrees. It was very difficult for him to live with this thought for 3 years. But he consoled himself with the thought that fate would bring them together in the training tower and they would again be able to sort out this situation. Bajen didn't abandon the idea that after the death of his younger brother, the White Tiger Palace would become his. He started playing again, only a different melody, and the spider tiger began to move towards Bu-Kei. With his hands folded, the White Tiger Master decided to respond with a torture palm. But what a surprise when the fire dissipated. In difficult times, the golden lion gave this beast to his runaway brother. After a little work, Bajen made this tiger from the black metal of the 9 heavens. And now all the White Tiger techniques are no match for him. But Bu-Kei couldn't believe that his brother had betrayed his race and become a pawn in the golden lion race. He said that they oppress and exterminate their native blood. Bajen admitted that he no longer cares because they promised to give him the White Tiger Palace. But his brother was going to teach him a lesson for such an alliance with his enemies. Big Brother was waiting for this. He recalled the small spiders. A huge black queen crawled out in their place. Bu-Kei tried his best to suppress his fear. Bajen asked for the last time to remember everything they went through as children, and if he gave up the title of Palace Master, he would live. But he did not agree. Realizing that he had always been a burden and the envy of Bu-Kei, he lost. Tied with a strong golden thread, he lay motionless on the ground. The mother was approaching him. The young man remembered how the old master taught him a technique called the Sky Purple Thunder Strike, which only the palace master could master. Little brother remembered the stolen treasures of the golden lion race. He was going to give it his all to grow and protect his homeland. Bajen understood what was about to happen. He lost all hope of becoming the ruler of an entire palace. The Sky Purple Thunder Strike not only helped defeat the traitor, but also solved the issue with the young man's phobia. He watched as his insects scattered, because when he developed them, he was not prepared for the fact that they would be destroyed by just such a weapon. Bajen said that he could still destroy little brother without these beasts. He began to transform into a tiger. Bu-Kei didn't understand why his brother's true form was Black Tiger, if they were from the white race. Using the Amigas as his shield, the little genius stood confidently on his feet. The dark tiger stood up on its paws, trying to break through the defense. At the same time, he growled and shouted that he was an older brother, which means he was better in everything. Bajen was confident that only under his command would the White Tiger race regain its former glory and once again become the strongest in the Western Wasteland. With these thoughts, he struck at his relative. It seemed that the battle was over. But the dark tiger rejoiced early because Bu-Kei promised to protect the palace. He simply cannot allow his enemies to destroy his race. This gave the little brother additional strength, and he continued the fight. The tiger growled with anger. He did not expect that everything would be so tiring. The beast kept waving its huge paws, and Bu-Kei was waiting for the right moment to make a control blow. The young master delivered a left hook to the animal. Bajen fell. He was still wheezing, choking on his own blood. The dying man took one last look at his brother. His eyes glowed. Strange patterns began to appear on his body. He insisted that the endless world would be destroyed. Then he began to shout that the Black Hermit had deceived him. His elder brother did not want to die. And Bu-Kei wondered who it was that had now taken over his brother's body. He stood silently and watched as Bajen's body rose into the air and began to split into small, dark phantoms that flew through the air. He was sorry that everything was so sad. If one fight was over, the second was just gaining momentum. Sanjia heard that it turns out that Liu Feng has been looking for the guys for a long time. Sky Crane asked where the prince of the monkey race was. His plans changed a bit. Now he had to deal with the guy with the umbrella and then take the red chain from Lu Jun. Events in the South Sea haunted Liu Feng for a long time. He wanted to quickly return what should rightfully go to him. Events took place in the Tomb of the Red Chain, which was located in the South Sea. The artifact consisted of 2 lines that transformed into a writhing, hornless dragon. For 10,000 years he lived in captivity, without the opportunity to escape, because the Kupeng race closed it because they were making a mess in the South Sea. The dragons looked fierce, but the words that Sanjia's father said only invigorated the young man. The emperor was confident that the red chains should belong entirely to the heir of the monkeys. As long as the guys considered themselves brothers, nothing was impossible. They were about to engage in a heated battle when suddenly Lu Jun was the first to be wounded. Someone else wanted to get the desired artifact and was not going to give in to the company of guys. Liu Feng from the Golden Crane race appeared, holding a dual tormenting blade in his hands. He was going to combine his weapon with the red chain. Together, he would be able to become more powerful than the 4 main artifacts and bring him closer to a full independent form. Now the guys understood why he needed the dragons. We'll have to fight. Liu Feng had no choice but to attack them. He faced not 1, but 2 powerful forces at once. Lu Jun was not very strong then, so he quickly flew back. The young man fell on the seal, which was guarded by the dragon. The master's blood got on it, and the stamp began to collapse. The writhing snakes were free. Lu Jun remembered Liu Feng's attempt to kill him. The guy was going to return to the offender as soon as he tamed the red chain. At first, the curly dragons began to squeeze the golden monkey, but then they chose another option. The 3 of them rose to the surface of the sea and then completely jumped out of the water, rising high into the sky. Liu Feng saw the heavenly monkey merging with the hornless entities. He was very angry because he was the one who wanted the red chain. On land, Lu Jun put them behind bars to prevent them from escaping. Then the prince noticed a tattoo on his hands. This was a sign that he had pacified 2 dragons and received a beautiful artifact. And now, Liu Feng fought against Sanjia. The enemy tried to prick his opponent, but the guy with the umbrella was calm. The crane could not calm down. He again started talking about the perfect artifact. He had everyone around him to blame. He also spoke about Emperor Kup Peng, believing that without his father, the young man could do nothing. Now, the plans have changed, and the bird wants to take the umbrella. Any of the 4 amulets would suit Liu Feng. He didn't see the difference with which talisman he connected his dual blade to create a perfect artifact. Sanjia said that this would never happen and sent a tidal wave towards the enemy. The power of the sea dweller was powerful. Upon landing, Liu Feng thought that the artifact was excellent and that he would have to give his all to take it. After the first blow, the young man moved on to the second. Sanjia released his umbrella to attack Crane with a smooth wave. A predatory killer whale emerged from the sea, and the heavenly firebird was already flying in the air. She pierced the fish right through with her sharp beak. The white whale was severely wounded and had to hide in the depths of the South Sea. And the bird made several more circles, making sure that there was no threat, and returned to its owner. In the dense canopy of Myriad, the battle was almost over. Sanjia could barely breathe. His artifact landed nearby. Liu Feng asked, "Is this all that the Kunpeng race is capable of?" He said that the young man had occupied the throne for too long with such abilities. And from now on, the time of a new ruler begins, the Divine Crane. After these words, Sanjia got a second wind. The guy grabbed his chest. He experienced severe pain in the heart area. His hand turned to stone. Liu Feng did not understand what was happening to his enemy, because a minute earlier he could barely move. Now in front of him was a participant full of strength, whose eyes were burning with fire. The bird did not take into account that without its umbrella, Sanjia on land begins to go wild. The crane began to get nervous. He did not know what to expect from the mad young man and began to turn him against Lu Jun. But he had already entered a state of passion, and now his goal was to kill everyone indiscriminately. His 9-headed water serpent also lost control and began to attack Liu Feng without respite. The bird defended itself as best it could, but now it was the turn of the next aquatic inhabitant. The call of the hydra especially shook the excellent condition of the firebird. Liu Feng liked this start to a new battle. He dreamed of cutting off the head of a sea snake with his blade. But Sanjia continued to rage. He motioned for the sea monster to attack the crane. The skybird also went on the attack, in which the winner was to be determined. The hydra was not going to stop and smeared Liu Feng on its muzzle, who did not have time to react. The young man fell to the ground. He felt not only pain throughout his body, but also great disappointment that he lost. After all, he did not have time to fight Lu Jun. But the distraught Sanjia did not even think about finishing. He was determined to fight to the death. His eyes continued to emit red flames. Not far away was the red-eyed frog queen. She immediately suspected that something was wrong in the behavior of Prince Kunpeng. The girl didn't know if she could calm him down. While Liu Feng was shouting that he was his opponent, Sanjia switched to Toad. She considered it necessary to use the pearl because the stone was connected with the guy, which means it has the power to return his mind. Yunwu turned straight towards the young man and his aquatic dweller. She threw the magic crystal at them. All we had to do was wait for a miracle to happen. Then she carefully asked if he remembered her. In response, I heard my name and calmed down. The girl said that she saw Lu Jun, who went to the top of the tree. They decide to go together. The disgraced Liu Feng continues to call Sanjia. He demands to continue the battle. But the guy with the umbrella decided to leave everything as it is. A couple of tower members rushed past them. Go Dahu was running away from the second elder's daughter with a bunch of useful materials. They could not share a rare crystal that restores strength. The cage with Chiao Kai was already visible, and Lu Jun continued to climb the tree without stopping. Hao Yuan Feng spoke to the prince. He said that he had been waiting for the heir to the throne for a very long time. The son of the great elder realized that it was not worth relying only on the sky crane. Now everything had passed into his hands. He asked the hero where he was in such a hurry. Lu Jun warned Yuan Fang not to cross his path. He said that he would not restrain himself as he did on the volcano. The elder's son told him who was upstairs. He believed that the prince would not last long because Jin Xiao had the power of the third-level supreme calamities. But he didn't care who he was. Lu Jun was going to kill the kidnapper with one blow. But Yuan Fang wanted to destroy the heir with his own hands. He suggested that they fight for real and start the battle right now. The long-haired youth took out the legendary sword of the wild boar race and pointed it towards the youth. Lu Jun is already confused which side Yuan Fang is on. Maybe he has completely forgotten that he is a monkey. A black boar with a lion's mane was rushing towards the master. The son of the great elder invited the young man to come closer to feel the power of the legendary sword. But the prince replied that he was not afraid of the demon boar. Here they were both protected by their spiritual animals. From the outside, it looked very spectacular. Deciding to finish Lu Jun as quickly as possible, he summons twin dragons. The staff in his hand frees the two hornless coiling snakes. Yuan Fang didn't know how to save himself. Covering himself with the mountain demon's shield, he plunges his sword into the ground. Lu Jun recognized this technique. Charge of 10,000 boars. There were so many of them. The prince shouted to the enemy that if he still had something in store, then let him use it right away. Yuan Fang mocked the hero. Seeing that he had killed one demonic beast, he decided to reveal that there were still 10,000 pigs left. Lu Jun called the entire Yuan family traitors, but the enemy was merciless. He recalled that 3 years ago the deceased king protected the prince, but now there is no one to stand up for him. The young man thought that in the past they were friends, but the elder's son had been in the shadows all his life, and now he was tired of being in second place. Therefore, today, he must kill the heir. Having identified the leader of the demonic pack, Lu Jun jumped on his neck. The writhing dragons squeezed the pig's throat like a collar. The master ordered the boar to obey, and then there was a real taming of the wild one, as happens in the Spanish arena. The demon resisted for a long time, but the shackles were stronger. The wild beast was exhausted and began to calm down little by little. When the hero felt that he had complete control over the animal, he shouted to Yuan Fang to repeat who should die. The elder's son had a couple of trump cards in his arsenal. It was now that he began to use the demonic mountain blade. Where he pointed the blade, sharp razors flew there. Lu Jun asked the coiling dragon for protection from them. The entity obeyed its master. She cracked them like seeds at lightning speed, and then the masters fought in close combat. Each was very strong in his own way. Only the prince's animal was more perfect than his opponent's. The hero wanted to end this fight as quickly as possible. World art. Crushing golden scale dragon, the young man became invincible. Putting his staff to Yuan Fang, he said that even after riding a pig, he could not win. The enemy was in no hurry to surrender. He had pills in stock. The son of the great elder was sure that he would kill the heir. He took a handful of pills and popped them into his mouth, thinking that if one didn't work, then together it would just be a cannon of results. Yuan Fang laughed. The Boar King gave him not only a sword, but also the mountain demon armor. He was weak and therefore could not use this artifact. The young prince understood that his enemy was now above his level. The traitor was eager to see what the young man was now capable of. What is stronger armor or armor? The fearless hero entered the fight. He believed that if good was on his side, then no evil could prevail. Moreover, he still has to save Xiao Kai, and Jin Xiao was hanging out near the cage with the she-wolf. He looked at the time, which was almost running out, and asked the girl if she had changed her mind and was ready to give up the moon talisman. But she said that he might not even dream of getting her jewelry. Then he bound her hands with magical cuffs so that she could not escape, like during the inheritance ceremony. Now Xiao Kai knew for sure that the failure of the ceremony, the damage to the moon amulet, and the fact that her sister fell into a long sleep were all the doings of the Golden Lion race. Then Jin Xiao admitted that he really wanted to meet her sister. He rejoiced like a child, seeing that the girl was in great pain, but she could not stand it and began to call her relative. Her call was heard. The cage broke, and Xiao Kai was now free for us. The astonished villain did not understand what was the matter and how she was able to bypass the iron cage of mountain rock. When the bright glow faded a little, he could see the Wolf Queen in front of him. A beautiful girl with a beast skull and a mask asked how he dared to offend her sister. Jin Xiao watched this fusion of two souls into one body, something that is rarely seen. He is glad that he was lucky enough to meet the leader of the wolf race, Ling Xiao. She asked how he dared to show up after ruining the heritage ceremony. She assumed that the young man wanted to atone for his sins. The guy thought that she was out of her mind. He did not abandon the idea of taking away the moonstone. Ling Xiao waved her staff and summoned a wolf howl. The villain clutched his black cloud spear and told the Empress that today's battle was the beginning of his path to the throne. He kept shouting that he would take away the moon talisman. The furious strike was supposed to weaken the master's ardor. He flew straight into the clutches of the frost wolf. The Empress did not understand how such an unworthy warrior could desire her crystal, and he had already thrown his spear in her direction. The piercing void throw went through the white predator but did not reach the queen. She shielded herself from the blow with the moon mirror, which deflected the harpoon. Ling Xiao needed to end this fight, otherwise her sister's body would suffer greatly when she left it. She realized that she could no longer control the flesh. Seeing how easily the blow was repelled, he understood how cool the talisman was, and he wanted it even more. The Empress continued to finish off her opponent. She unleashed Storm Strike on him. A little lower too, everything was heading towards a denouement. The eldest son wanted to persuade Lu Jun that if he surrendered, a quick, painless death could be arranged. But the prince was not sure that he would die. To begin with, the master chose Shadow Clone, but the enemy was surprised that they were going to defeat him with such weak techniques. Jumping on the demon from behind, Lu Jun realized that he had caught his intentions. Yuan Fang firmly grabbed the youth's staff. This time, the heir lost and was thrown onto the rocks. The knight in armor said that he now looks like his late father. Lu Jun realized that the Yuan family was responsible for his father's death. And now they were going to send the prince too after the Monkey King. The master was distracted from his battle. He saw a bright glow where Xiao Kai was. She's in trouble. Didn't he have time? And she, in the guise of her sister, slept deeply, without even suspecting what kind of war is taking place without her participation. Lu Jun tried to resist the demon's power. The hero felt pain in his hands. His sword was blocked and his hands were broken. Yuan Fang again reminded that the prince could give up. But the young man didn't even think about it, because he made a promise to save the wolf girl and had not yet avenged his father. Fan Kun seemed to understand that the prince needed help. Lu Jun noticed that the staff had become very hot and its power was flowing into him. Is he really restoring his body? My hands have healed. The force became even more powerful. The artifact will evolve again, which means the heir will also have an update. Yuan Fang had never fully understood how powerful Fan Kun could be. He couldn't understand how the staff could break through to the third level of the Supreme Tribulations. He was going to stop him from becoming stronger. He needed to immediately interfere with the evolution process. But Lu Jun could fight, and the Boar Emperor failed. He could not believe that one of the legendary artifacts belonged to the prince. Yuan Feng believed that the young man did not deserve him. After the update, the golden monkey disappeared, leaving the master alone with the demon knight. The staff increased in size. Now you can beat the enemy much faster. And Lu Jun decided to finish off the enemy with the monkey step. Feeling the power of Fan Kun, Yuan Feng wanted to take this artifact for himself, but the young man wanted to see how he would succeed. And the master cloned again, surrounding the son of the great elder with his own kind. But he was not at a loss and began to figure out the straight man through extermination. While he was destroying copies of Lu Jun, the young man prepared a heaven and earth strike for Yuan Feng. Fan Kun was now the size of a pole. The young master began to press down the Black Knight with a staff as huge as a battering ram. The ground under his feet began to move apart. He began to lose his armor. The armor, like pieces of mud, cracked and fell under his feet. When Yuan Feng was defeated, the heir asked if he thought things could turn out like this. After all, when they took the life of his father, their plans did not include losing. But then the confession of the loser began. He admitted that the plan was concocted by the Boar Emperor, who was blackmailing their family. Lu Jun asked if there was another way. It turned out that the Boar Emperor was very strong and they had no other choice. He said if the prince spared him, he would help him ascend the throne. Lu Jun refused because he could cope without his participation. But if he wanted to save his skin, then he and his father would have to admit their mistakes. And he made such a promise with Yuan Feng. After that, the master turned around and walked away. And the elder's son called him to say that he still believed that it was better for the heir to die. He fired a crystal demon arrow after the master. Lu Jun dissolves the dart. The enemy did not appreciate the chance to live given to him. Now Yuan Feng is definitely defeated because the hero drove out the spiritual beast from him. The elder's son falls breathless. Gu Yuzjiao witnessed this murder. Lu Jun no longer saw the threat and went to help Xiao Kai because the enemy would definitely kill her. The damage to the body had reached its limit. It could no longer withstand the Empress's soul. Ling Xiao, like a pest, used his sister's shell. The lion race possessed the seal of terror, and in tandem with the moon talisman, his father would lead the conquest of the entire continent of beasts. He shouted that she was not destined to see what would happen in the future because he would kill her. But the brave empress was going to prevent this. Ling Xiao protected herself with the moon mirror, and the enemy's spear did not reach its intended target. Jin Xiao shouted that she was injured back then at the ceremony and would no longer compete with his father. He said that his race is the strongest and invincible. The defense was becoming difficult to hold. The girl realized that time was up and the body would soon come under the control of her sister. Now her shield shattered and the black spear rested on the Empress's neck area. What should we do now? Someone's force prevented me from finishing what I started. Finishing off the Frostwolf Queen was saved by Fan Kun. It was very bright and Jin Xiao could not see who had joined their battle. When he asked who was there, Lu Jun replied that he was the king of the monkey race. The Empress did not know the young man. The prince also did not understand where Xiao Kai was, but he saw a familiar staff on the stranger, which means she belongs. It was not the right time to meet. Jin Xiao, seeing the heir, said that he was in the way and ordered not to interfere. But the hero snapped back, saying that no matter what, he wouldn't hurt his friends. The enemy was waiting for a blow, the Golden Revolution. But the enemy wanted more. It seemed weak to him. Ling Xiao decided to lend the moon talisman to the prince because her sister trusted the young man. Moreover, if she suddenly switches off, she will no longer need it. Lu Jun was confused as to where Xiao Kai had gone, why the Empress had the amulet, and why he needed this decoration. But the girl only ordered him to protect her sister. As soon as he finished, her eyes became glassy, and then the girl began to change her appearance, and finally his old acquaintance was already standing in front of the young man. She was weak. The enemy did not think that the Empress would give her talisman to the heir, but he thought that the monkey race would not be able to protect it. Jin Xiao offered to voluntarily give up the amulet. They tried to break through one, but on the side of the second line there was a lot of experience of the third level when the hero was still new to this. Jin Xiao decided to attack the enemy with the Sand Soldier Army, but it did not seem like a difficult challenge. Standing in a pile of sand, as if in the Sahara Desert, Lu Jun asked, "Are the mummies of the lion race really that weak?" Then Ling Xiao only replied that heroes are born, and he is very far from him. The master noticed that the sands had become quicksand and were slowly sucking his feet. Everything went according to plan for the opponent. He enjoyed it when he saw that the prince was already waist-deep in sand. Now the talisman is definitely his. When he drowned in the sand, he began to feel like someone's hellish hands were dragging him below. Why is this happening? After all, he still needs to avenge his father and save Xiao Kai. Remembering the moon talisman, Lu Jun decided it was time to try the artifact. A huge white wolf came out to the young man. Ling Xiao decided that the monkey heir was dead and no one could stop him. He looked at his hourglass and realized that he would soon be thrown out of the training tower. But what is it? Lu Jun flew out of the sand. He had returned and was about to fight the second prince of the Golden Lion race again. Fan Kun teamed up with the moon amulet. This saved the young man. Ling Xiao admitted that the prince was not a timid person. The enemy begins to invite the guy to voluntarily give up the jewelry. After such a service, they promise to make him the king of the monkey race. But Lu Jun refuses such a deal. Ling Xiao continues to cheat. Now he offers the position of the emperor. But the hero remains unbowed. He does not want to become a traitor or a pawn in the hands of Lviv. And then he began to praise his father, saying how strong and invincible he was throughout the entire continent. But he did not forget about himself, calling himself the best of the brothers. He revealed his plans a little. He wanted to capture all 4 legendary artifacts and create the most powerful weapon against the beasts. Lu Jun said that his plans are very selfish and will remain just a dream. Hearing the insolence, Ling Xiao decides to punish the ill-mannered guy. The invasion of darkness rushes towards the hero. He manages to put out his staff and begins to resist the power of the black spear. Ling Xiao boasts to the prince that his weapon is created from the blood of the legendary beast and is on par with the moon talisman in power. Lu Jun's legs began to give way. Sweat appeared on his forehead. It was clear that it was difficult for him. And always, when he can't cope, help comes. Behind the guy, the Xiao Kai amulet is displayed. The power of the moon talisman began to transfer into the prince's staff. They decided to unite. But will it be possible to defeat your opponent now? It was necessary to try Fan Kun's abilities. Maybe his strength will be insufficient again. The prince charged Ling Xiao with the Earth and Heaven Strike. The villain watched as the staff absorbed the energy from the necklace and then blocked his spear. It didn't seem like a strong weapon, and he asked where the heir got it from. Lu Jun decided to introduce the Lion Prince to his artifact. Having heard the truth, he wanted to win as quickly as possible. Ling Xiao thought that the gods loved him, since they allowed him to find the moon talisman and Fan Kun at the same time. After that, he releases his spirit beast. Lu Jun keeps up with the enemy and calls out the golden armored monkey. Prince Lions thinks that one blow from him will be enough to kill the heir. But having a combination of 2 artifacts, the winnings should also be doubled. So the hero boldly entered into a confrontation with the black spear. Everything ended very quickly. Fan Kun destroyed the mouth and the enemy flew to the side. At this moment, it was as if Ling Xiao had been possessed by a demon. He saw the incredible power of the 2 artifacts and imagined how powerful the 4 of them would be. He mentally promised that he would please his father with new tchotchkes. And clenching his fingers, he attacks the hero with the devouring fist of the lion. Lu Jun spins up and causes the Earth and Heaven funnel to appear. The lion's head hits it, and when he stops, he hits the ground with his staff. This was the signal for the writhing hornless dragons to appear. The entity binds its plastic body to Ling Xiao, preventing him from breathing or moving. With Lu Jun Moon and Cloud Pierce, he pierces the opponent. Having fallen, Prince Lvov begins to console himself that he cannot let his father down and is still ready to fight. But the hero tells him the truth that he lost. At this very moment, Hourglass sends Ling Xiao out of the tower. He, like a little boy, cries that he wants more, that he has not finished yet and is better than everyone else. The hero looked after the second Prince of Lvov as he flew away and thought that by doing this, the enemy managed to save his life. The tree began to collapse, and Xiao Kai was still unconscious. Lu Jun asked for protection from his dragons. He was also worried about his other friends. The young man looked at the girl and was glad that she was safe. He realized that her sister and herself shared one body. He began to pull her cheeks, and the girl came off. Xiao Kai saw the prince in front of her and could not contain her feelings. She rushed to hug him. After all, he came to save her, as he promised. The master was in a hurry to give her the lunar talisman. He said her sister lent it to him. The she-wolf was upset because her sister always helps her, but she can't do anything for her. Xiao Kai, with tears in her eyes, said that she went to Dongshuan to restore her amulet, because if it is not repaired, the Wolf Empress may fall asleep forever. Even at birth, he and his sister were in danger, and their father sealed the necklace into their bodies, which is why they survived. But during the inheritance ceremony, the amulet was damaged, and the sister fell into a coma. The young man became emotional from her confession. He consoled the girl as best he could. The main thing was that he was nearby. The golden monkey hugged the northern wolf and covered him with his protective dome. The guys were so carried away that they did not immediately notice that it was raining. Then they saw Sanjia and Yunwu. The Frog Queen admired how accurately the artifact of the Prince of the Kunpeng race was able to determine the location of the couple. Lu Jun was once to see that everything was fine. All that remained was to find Godahu and Bu Kai. But the guy in the ear flaps didn't have to wait long for his appearance. He spent all his time eating material. The young man was hurrying to the prince to tell him some crazy idea when he stepped on someone's head. It was Bu Kai. Seeing that the prince's girlfriend was saved and all his friends were gathered, he hurried them to get out of here. There was definitely some kind of glitch in the training tower that caused unexpected circumstances to emerge. According to the rules, a rescue squad should have been sent to help the participants. Xiao Kai decided to turn to her sister to open the passage with the help of the moon talisman. Ling Xiao came to the call. The Empress, with the help of Twilight Distortion, moved all the guys to the main gate of the tower. Everyone was glad that their ordeal was over. Lu Jun received praise from the Queen of the Frostwolf race. She said that he did well. But then she openly forbade the guy to date her sister. She didn't even want them to like each other as friends. Now, after the help of Fan Kun, she awakened and could participate in the fate of her clan and the life of her younger sister. The royal wolf spirit ran up to them, greeted the Empress, and said that he had come to report news from the clan. The beast said that the lion army was moving towards the border of the northern region, which was not protected at all, and the presence of one of the rulers was needed to calm the people. She ordered the beast to be returned to the clan and wait for them there. The queen realized that if the emperor of the Golden Lion race had not planned to take over their territories, then Jin Xiao would not have attacked her. The last thing Lu Jun wanted was to anger the empress, and he decided it was time to leave. He told the girl his decision, and she promised to go to the last meeting with Xiao Kai. The moon talisman lit up, and now in front of the young man was his familiar wolf girl. The prince was the first to say goodbye. He said that she needed to return to her people, and he should deal with Dongshuan's traitors. He asked her to take care of herself. The girl kept repeating that Lu Jun would definitely become the Monkey King. She looked him straight in the eyes when she asked if he would come to visit her in the future. He took her hand and promised that he would, of course, come visit, but he didn't know that they were being overheard. But Ling Xiao didn't like it when her orders were ignored. She suddenly appeared in front of the young man, pulled back her hand, and repeated that this was their last meeting. Turning around, the Empress walked away from the surprised eyewitnesses. She didn't care about the feelings of two loving hearts. Following the fleeing Arctic wolf, I said goodbye to my friends and Go Dahu. His sympathy for girls of the Frostwolf race was known to everyone for a long time, and it is not news that he followed. Although the competition in the training tower was not completed, the results were still calculated. The Heavenly Palace brought out all the remaining participants and showed the tournament table. The first to be recognized was Lu Jun, the second was Sanjia, and the third was Bu Kai. Everyone began to congratulate the prince, but he was in no hurry to rejoice. After all, first place didn't mean that he was a king. He still had to deal with the great elder and leader of the boars. Hua Ha appeared from the sea, who called Sanjia to go to the rainforest because the python race had changed. Volcanic beasts emerged from the earth and attacked the people of the red-eyed frog. But they couldn't cope with the enemy alone and requested help from the South Sea. Now, he has become the commander-in-chief of the army and must go to protect his neighbors. Sanjia looked at Lu Jun because he wanted to go with the prince. But the hero reassured his friend, saying that he could handle the monkeys himself. Yunwu was also going to go with the umbrella guy. Having said goodbye to his brother, Bu Kaye also got ready to leave. Pokamuchka was glad to meet you. As he left, he wished the prince a speedy reunion with the wolf girl. Approaching the gates of his hometown, Lu Jun felt peace in his soul. He was met by Sun Haya, who had already learned that the hero took first place. He told the old man that he had conducted an investigation into the murder of his father, and now all those involved must be punished. They both knew that the Great Elder controlled the city's army, and the Second Elder's goals were still unclear. And then a plan came to join forces before seizing control of the soldiers. But first, Lu Jun needed to convince Gulan to be on their side so Sun Haya could start preparing for the inheritance ceremony. The gates collapsed and the first elder stood on the threshold, with a small army behind. He asked if the prince was still going to become king after becoming the murderer of his son. There were no signs of trouble. Having sent Yuan Fang to the training tower to deal with the heir, Yuan Hong celebrated the future victory with his comrade in arms, Ambassador Bors. The partners, without hesitation, downed a glass of sake one after another, cheerfully encouraging how they would live in the future. Gu Yu's Jiao burst into the door. She was in tears. The girl screamed that her brother was no more, that he had been killed in the tower. Yuan Hong jumped up from his seat, and Liu Chengguan was absolutely calm. He said that, in his opinion, Lu Jun was not able to do this. But the daughter of the second elder kept repeating that she was telling the truth and that her brother must be avenged. Realizing that this was the bitter truth, the men told her to tell more precisely what happened. She didn't really say anything, because when she managed to find Yuan Fang in the training tower, she only saw Lu Jun killing him. A black raven flew into the chambers, bringing news from the Boar clan. Having read the package, the fat man did not know how to understand it. There he was informed that the heir of the monkey race had evolved, taken first place, and that Yuan Fang had indeed died. Now there was no longer any doubt that the girl was lying. The Great Elder's anger was so great that his spirit beast almost broke through the ceiling. Liu Chengguan asked if he ever thought that the fame of his son's killer would surpass him. After all, with first place he is guaranteed to become the new king. But he could not come to terms with this because he had lost his close relative, and now they still want to take away the throne. The elder decides to go and warn the second elder. In the dead of night, the great Yuan Hong gathers his soldiers. He tells them the latest news and says that Lu Jun has come to kill him too. He suggests killing the prince immediately. And now they stood on the threshold to commit lynching of the hero. This invasion was more like an armed uprising against state power. Yuan Hong said that he came here to kill Lu Jun, but before he does so, he must kneel before the great elder. But the young man finally answered that even if the first elder did not need him, the guy himself would have found him. The prince wanted to hear a confession. Was it true what Yuan Fang said before his death, and did they really cause the death of his father? The man with the scar answered yes. Hearing a positive answer, the guy was going to kill Yuan Hong. He has already prepared his staff. Meanwhile, at the Gulan Palace, people sent on behalf of the prince had already arrived. He quickly gathers his army because tonight will be filled with the chaos of battle. But the old man will not interfere in the relationship between the two competitors for the throne. He decides to hold the perimeter and orders the killing of anyone who dares to interfere with their battle. At the end, Gulan admitted to himself that he was on the neutral side, and that was all he could do for Lu Jun. The fight between them has not yet begun. They began to find out who truly deserves death. Lu Jun considered himself the Monkey King and wanted to avenge his father's death. If he defeats the Great Elder, the clan will support him. But Yuan Hong mocked the guy, because even Emperor Lu Wuji himself died at his hands. Then how could this boy resist him? There was nowhere to run, because there were enemy people around. It turns out there were a lot more of them than he thought. A grunt came from the roof. There sat, always happy, Liu Chengguan, who supported the candidacy for the post of King Yuan Hong. Sun Haya couldn't stand it. He began to express to the elder how he dared to team up with Wild Boar. After all, when people find out, they will not tolerate this. The prince was in agreement. He saw how everyone relaxed after the death of his father. The enemy was burning with anger. He wanted to quickly clarify all the issues through battle. The elder stepped into the background, holding out his decorated blade. With this, he was going to exterminate evil from the ape race forever. But the young man put out his legendary fan kun and shouted to the enemy that he was a traitor and nothing could be fixed. Sonhaya took on the soldiers who began to attack them. The hero took off, and at that very moment, the coiling dragons appeared. Yuan Hong protected his spiritual beast with red armor. And with the blade, he attacked Tai Hui with the flash of peak. The snakes from Fan Kun maneuvered between the flying fragments. After them, clones of the Great Elder's sword flew, and if the entities managed to remain intact, then the prince suffered. Sonhaya was worried about the condition of the air, but the old man did not have time to help the guy, because he was stunned by Liu Chongguan. He ordered the upstart to be tied up. Seeing how his man was being treated, Lu Jun began shouting to be released immediately. But Sonhaya asked the young man to leave him and not be distracted from the battle. Yuan Hong ordered the death of the old man. He wanted not a single devoted servant of the deceased king to remain. The soldier was about to carry out his master's orders. Everything happened very quickly. The arrow killed the soldier, the old man was freed. The king's army has finally arrived. Having prepared for any outcome of events, Sonhaya recruited these soldiers a long time ago. Now their time has come. But Yuan Hong told about his trump card that he had the daughter of the second elder hostage. He thought out everything to the smallest detail so that the entire monkey race would be under his control. The enemy said that now no one could save the heir. He then orders the soldiers to kill the young man. The royal army descends to defend. The hero's goal was to fight Yuan Hong, not to destroy innocent lives. The guy challenged the enemy to a duel. When the traitor's army was too close, the guy had to throw everyone back to a safe distance with a world sweep. An elder stood aside and asked Lu Jun not to become arrogant, and then their abilities met and began to oppose each other. The prince learned how strong aura his opponent, who was at the supreme stage, had. The guy called out to Devouring Dragon. Yuan Hong was shocked at how terrifying the power was in the heir's weapon. Soaring above the enemy, Lu Jun pointed his staff at his victim. He warned that his level could not compare with Fan Kun. Hearing that, there was a legendary artifact in the battle, and Yuan Hong was left unarmed. Liu Chongguan went to the battlefield. He couldn't leave his brother in danger. Lu Jun did not hesitate. He unleashed a moon punch on his competitor. The great elder couldn't escape, his eyes radiating fear of Fan Kun. After all, if the young man took the legendary artifact for himself, the strength that Yuan Hong has will be too little to win. He was knocked down, and Liu Chongguan had 7 Fridays in a week. He was no longer in a hurry to help his, brother. He just stood there and thought, if he intervenes, will anything fundamentally change? The fat man slipped and fell flat in the middle of the battlefield. Everyone already knew how cheap an actor he is and how much he values his life. Yuan Hong realized that the prince had returned with this artifact when he left the tomb. Taking out a pill created from demon blood, he pops it into his mouth. Before it began to take effect, he managed to tell that the pill was made by the Wild Boar royal family and it was hundreds of times stronger than those made by the Yuan family. Lu Jun noticed that not only Yuan Feng, but also his father was addicted to pills. Why did they choose such an easy way to be stronger? It was difficult to determine which of the animals he became like. The body was covered with snake scales. Sharp thorns stuck out here and there. The head was grey and looked like a monkey. Yuan Hong has completed his transformation. And the hero didn't understand why no one needed Fan Kun before. And now, when Lu Jun took him, he keeps getting rid of those who want to fuck him. The mutant was furious. Only the strongest should wield the staff, and he considered himself such. But the young man said the opposite. The animal destroyed everything around. In the past, when the Monkey King chose his successor, Yuan Hong and Lu Wuji were contenders for the throne. But they chose the hero's father only because he was a disciple of the King of the Heavenly Path. But there was a huge difference between them. One fought against the Karbonov Emperor, and the other became friends with his sworn enemy in order to gain the throne. Liu Chongguan was still lying in its place. This way, he could hear the entire conversation of the duelists better. Yuan Hong took off saying that he had teamed up with the wild boars to kill Lu Jun's father. The enemy wanted to kill the young man with his improved version of the demonic monkey palm. By the way, Lu Wuji was killed by the same technique. The guy put his staff forward so that the hand could not crush him like a cockroach. It looks like the enemy is really serious and is going to send the hero to meet his father. Lu Jun has no choice but to summon his dragons. The writhing and hornless dragons wrap around the monkey's hand like bracelets. But even they failed to block the attack. After the death of the prince, the great elder wanted to take possession of the staff, with the help of which he would overthrow the Carbonov emperor himself. Now there was Lu Wuji's exit. It was no longer scary because the elder was almost winning. The boar heard Yuan Hong's vile plans, and now the fat man wanted to take Fan Kun away faster than anyone else. The pig jumped up and flew headlong towards the prince. As he walked, he yelled for the great brother to let him help. He wanted to kill the heir himself. The boar was going to use a strong, bloody spiritual sword against the heir of the monkey race. The first sword, furious murder, was caught by Sun Haya. He ordered the king's army to protect his highness and put himself in danger. The tattoos on the hero's hands began to disappear, which meant that the powers of the dragons had ended, and he still didn't know what to do next. The second sword, the destructive cut, kills the soldiers who were recruited by Sun Haya. Lu Jun was still holding Monkey's palm. How the fat man was already nearby and was preparing the third sword for the guy, the deadly assassin. At the last moment, the prince performs the defense that then helped him curb the dragons at the bottom of the southern sea. The hero found himself inside a ball created from chains. The enemies realized that he had managed to get out. The boar again began to back away from fear for its life. Lu Jun was freely held inside the ball. He said that if Yuan Hong wants to be king, then only through his corpse. The great elder warned the prince that he was ready to crush him with one finger. After eating the pill, he reached the highest earthly level. This is his six-armed magic warrior. This beast was created by the fusion of 3 soldiers that Yuan Hong had been fighting for years. After killing countless warriors, they became a single artifact. Lu Jun remembered from his father's stories how terrible the 6-armed warrior was, because thousands of one-eyed rhinoceroses were killed during its creation. The hero did not expect that the old deceiver kept such a secret. Yuan Hong boasted that the young man was the first to see this beast form, and then a double shield of yin and yang appeared near the warrior. The enemy threw this armor at the prince like a frisbee, but the hero managed to hit one and then another plate. They turned out to be so heavy that even the staff sagged. The great elder was surprised that the prince managed quickly, however. He told him that these yin and yang shields are filled with spiritual energy between heaven and earth. They are attracted. The enemy could not wait for the armor to cut the young man into small pieces. It was difficult for Lu Jun to fight him off. He used the staff as a heart-piercing drill, and the shield was easily destroyed. Yuan Hong shouted at the young man how dare he break his armor, but the heir replied that his 6-armed warrior was no match for Fan Kun. Now the elder took up giant spiritual magic, and the young man decided to test the attentiveness of his opponent and used the shadow clone. Yuan Hong's every attempt was unsuccessful, and he would definitely never win the lottery jackpot. Each warrior's head saw a copy of the real prince. And Lu Jun laughed that he couldn't understand who was in front of him, as if he was blind. Yuan Hong got tired of this game, and he started a bloody whirlpool. The entity began to throw its swords at the prince's clones. Lu Jun made the maximum volume of his copies. He said that he would not hide if the elder agreed to meet face to face. The air snapped the moment, and the bloody whirlpool caught him. He hit himself hard when he fell. Getting up, Lu Jun understands that Yuan Hong's hurricane of blades is very strong and he can't easily cope with it. The guy decides he needs to dodge. The Sun Haya mansion was protected by an armored dome. Gulan believed that in the heat of battle for the throne, they would destroy the entire city. The elder bought his cigarette and thought that they were obliged to hold the barrier by any means possible. Otherwise, the townspeople might suffer. Dodging the next swords, Lu Jun rises very high and notices the dome of protection. He realizes that the second elder is here. Yuan Hong should not have been released, because if he went crazy, the city would suffer. The first crack has already appeared on the protection. The destructive power of his father's killer was enormous. Lu Jun feared that the barrier would not last long. The prince must try to stop him. The tattoo began to appear again on the prince's arm. The master began to release a huge amount of chain by the meter in order to catch the whirlpool, inside of which was the six-armed warrior. Having thrust the staff into the ground, Lu Jun wound the chain around it as well. And then he ordered Fan Kun to be patient because the noose had already entangled Yuan Hong. Now all that was left to do was to hold her back and exhaust the Great Elder. I had to call the Golden Armored Ape. Seeing that the enemy has become unstoppable and went to ram, the heir tries to use the Chai energy. And, having shouted everything to his enemy, the prince delivers the final blow. Lu Jun releases the chain and throws Fan Kun into the air. The staff increases in size to the size of a pillar. While holding this column, the master directs it directly from above at his opponent. This is the defeat of the Yuan family of traitors and rebels. The staff completed its task and returned to its normal size. Fan Kun went straight into the Great Elder's heart. Coughing up blood, he said he didn't expect to die at the boy's hands. Lu Jun replied that he had signed his own death warrant the moment he befriended the pigs and killed the Monkey King. The last words of the dying man were such that the heir does not even imagine how strong the Boar Emperor is. 4 months earlier, an ambush had been set up near the gate to the family tombs. Once Lu Wuji reached the supreme earthly level, he stopped being afraid of the Pig Emperor, and now his enemies wanted to get rid of him. They figured out that the Monkey King comes to the cemetery every year to honor the memory of his wife. He always comes here alone. Yuan Hong has not seen a better chance than now. It was convenient for him to get rid of the king because they promised to give him the throne of the monkey race. Coming out of the family tomb, Lu Wuji seemed suspiciously quiet. Lately, he had a presentiment that something bad would happen, and therefore saw a catch everywhere. But this time, his intuition was right. The enemy was waiting for the king, and as soon as he appeared on the horizon, the water dragons almost injured the ruler. Lu Wuji used his staff. He spun it in front of him, but the dragons penetrated in a circle from the king, who surrounded himself with a magic circle. Then Yuan Hong and Liu Chongguan appeared with an army of soldiers. The first elder told the leader of the monkey clan to prepare for death. A fat man at my side was encouraging. The ruler heard that by order of the Wild Boar Emperor he must die. But Lu Wuji did not understand why his subject was carrying out this order. How long ago did Yuan Hong start serving pigs? He began to shout that the monkey clan from Tongguang had fallen long ago and now the demonic boar race ruled Dongshuan. But Lu Wuji did not want to listen to this nonsense. He said that no one has the right to decide the fate of an entire clan. The enemy continued to press the leader with facts that he could not restore his position on the throne. But that was not all, because the ruler dared to marry a foreigner of foreign blood. And despite the power of Fan Kun, he still could not compare with the abilities of the Boar King. Yuan Hong believed that such behavior was unacceptable for the ruler of the monkeys, and it was unclear why the great king did not choose him to take his place. The elder was already preparing his sword. Lu Wuji had already summoned his spiritual beast. How dare this traitor even say that he will now protect the clan if he is in cahoots with his sworn enemies? Both swung their staffs in unison, the soldiers flying in all directions from Fan Kun's blows. The enemy didn't realize how strong the monkey leader had become over the years. But if Lu Wuji does not die today, Yuan Hong will not receive his throne. The fat man was tired of hanging around on the sidelines, and he wanted to get involved in the showdown between two duelists. He needed to do at least something in order to later tell how bravely he fought with the Monkey King, but he underestimated the leader's experience and got punched in the nose. Liu Chongguan grabbed his nickel. He shouted for brother Yuan Hong to dodge and keep defense, and he would call his uncle for help. But the elder was already lying on his shoulder blades. He ordered the fat man to quickly call the emperor of the wild boar race. And Lu Wuji had already turned to the pig. He pointed at it with his staff. This meant that it was his turn to be attacked. Squeezing his nose even more, Liu Chongguan suddenly let go of his hand and blood stained his talisman that hung on his neck. The artifact seemed to awaken and began to emit a red beam that went into the very sky. Two hands began to make their way to where it was shining through the clouds. Everyone watched the wild boar emperor appear. Yuan Hong even bowed his knee as a sign of respect. For the first time, Lu Wuji saw his enemy and the person who ordered his murder. The giant with thick eyebrows asked how the Monkey King dared to offend his nephew. The fat man immediately began to cry like a girl because his cute face was all bruised and swollen. And he also shouted that they wanted to kill him. The Monkey King didn't agree that the Boar Emperor had just broken through to the heavenly stage. Then why would he resist the earthly stage? Lu Wuji guessed that this was a projection of the king. He clarified why the reflection of the pig leader came to kill him if his real body was still on the magic mountain. And Yuan Hong didn't even understand that it was the emperor's fake. He just felt a lot of pressure. Even if it was a projection, it was at the level of supreme cultivation. Hitting the staff, Lu Wuji identified himself. But he is at the lower stage of the supreme realm. Will he be able to stop the enemy from being reflected? Since the time when the great Monkey King Tong Guang and a group of the strongest went to explore the endless starry sky and disappeared, the Monkey Clan has ceased to be the strongest race. The demonic Boar Emperor is now the only one at the supreme realm level. He is simply the god of Dongshuan. The inhabitants became slaves. They were forced to work constantly, humiliated and beaten. Lu Wuji was ready to die, but he would try to liberate Dongshuan's heavens. He gave his word to the city master, the great Monkey King, that he would protect the clan at all costs. The fat man's uncle pointed his index finger towards the speaker, and the leader of the monkeys flew into the air towards his opponent. The beam from Head Boar's hand met Fan Kun. The confrontation did not last long. The Lu Wuji artifact began to crumble. Is this really the end? The laser destroyed the staff and reached the king. The red ray passed through the brave and devoted leader of the ape race. He fell on the ground, to the delight of all enemies. At least, Lu Wuji did not become a traitor like Yuan Hong and stood up to his opponent alone until the very end. The leader of the monkeys fell on the stones right in front of the family cemetery. The veins in my arms burst from the struggle with someone else's power. Lu Wuji found the strength to stand up. He was still shaking. There was a hole left in his head from the enemy laser. The finger of the endless magic of the Boar King turned out to be strong. But the emperor was also wounded. His hand became crusty and then completely fell off. Seeing the pieces of flesh writhing in space, Liu Chongguan begins to get angry. Realizing that he now faces an exhausted opponent, he decides to finish off the Monkey King. Yuan Hong was surprised that Lu Wuji managed to injure the Boar King, but he is still stronger than him. Thinking that it was great luck that the rival for the throne would soon die, he waited for his exit. But the emperor did not need his beloved nephew to get his hands dirty with blood. He called the first elder to take what was his by right, which should go to him by right. Yuan Hong said that he has been dreaming about this for a long time. This made Lu Wuji laugh wildly. Do they really think that after his death the city will submit to them? The great elder explained that it was he who would lead the clan. Those who refused to obey would face a painful death. Lu Wuji recalled that he has an heir, Lu Jun. He hopes that under the leadership of the Silver Emperor of the Southern Sea, his son will achieve a lot. The fat man heard the king's words and got angry because the water old man does not want to communicate with them and mocks the pigs, prevents them from going to sea. He considered his uncle to be the strongest of all. Yuan Hong prepared for the final blow. As a weapon against Lu Wuji, he chose the all-consuming monkey palm. The Monkey King accepted defeat and his imminent death with a calm soul. He believed that his son would take revenge. His words turned out to be true. Lu Jun found those who took the life of his young father. The young man stood by Yuan Hong's body and collected his thoughts to complete the fight. The strong master began to cry for the first time in a long time. He was sure that his creator saw everything. And Liu Chongguan smelled fried again, and he hurried to save his butt. Hiding, he thought what a weakling Yuan Hong was because he killed the older one, and the younger one was safe and sound. Lu Jun called the fat man. The guy did not forget about him because Ambassador Karbanov is directly connected with his uncle. Realizing that he was found, a representative of the wild boar race tries to escape, but the master's staff blocks his path to retreat. A Liu Chongguan begins to threaten that if he dies, then there will be no empty space left from the monkey clan, because his uncle is the Boar King and he is his favorite. No one will escape revenge. Lu Jun said that the Pig Emperor ordered the murder of his father, and the Fat Man and Yuan Hong were the perpetrators. The Great Elder is dead. Liu Chongguan was next, and then the heir would get to the leader of the wild boars. The Fat Man realized that his affairs were bad, and he needed to call his uncle. With his hands folded in front of him, Liu Chongguan placed a fire barrier around himself. He decided that this protection would be enough to buy time and talk with the Boar Emperor. The Fat Man laughed right in Lu Jun's face. The hero tried to break through the dome with his staff, but he did not succeed either the first or the second time. While the prince was trying to remove the protection from the enemy inside the ball, Liu Chongguan was looking at his protective jade pendant. As long as his blood is on him, he can summon the king. The Fat Man threatened the young man that when his uncle came, the lid would come to him. And Lu Jun developed a plan to hit the same place, and it turned out to be effective. Seeing that the protection had cracked and would soon be destroyed, Liu Chongguan was afraid, because he did not even have time to contact his relative. Having broken the fire barrier, Lu Jun asked the Fat Man who could protect him now, and when he fell, he hit his nose and started bleeding. The ambassador picked up his amulet and dropped a drop of his blood. A red ray came out of the pendant and went into the very sky. The sky opened and the Boar King came out. Lu Jun stunned the emperor's favorite nephew right in front of his eyes. The heir didn't care who came. Seeing that Liu Chongguan was lying unconscious, the emperor became furious. He began to shout that the entire Tongguan clan would die along with the heir to the throne. This is what the young man wanted, because he would have had no other opportunity to call the leader of the boars. The prince pointed his staff in his direction. The king shouted how Lu Jun dared to injure his nephew, and his cry began to rain down on the heir of the monkeys like fire rain. Having driven the prince into a trap, the emperor promised that today the monkey race would cease to exist on the divine beast continent. But Lu Jun didn't just leave the king's threat. He asked again if he would change his mind if he lost. The heir will try to change the world. He clutches his staff in his hands and begins to spin continuously. Having reached maximum speed, the young man breaks the fire rain. The emperor sees that the enemy is strong and launches a second attack. From the mist, he collects the raging boar who grabs Fan Kun. A staff is like a toothpick for an animal. Realizing that he is about to lose his artifact, Lu Jun throws a chain on the wild predator. The shackles tighten the animal and it releases the staff. The prince finishes off the enraged boar with a Fan Kun blow. After disappearing, several smaller copies of piglets appear in its place. Realizing that in front of him were magic pigs that could split, the two became 4. If he continues, there will be even more of them. Gulan appears on the threshold. He is tired of sitting in ambush and he is ready to help the prince. The old man began to smoke his cigarette. Its smoke became a lot. It swallowed up the pigs and made them motionless. Gulan knelt down to greet the new king, and Lu Jun told the old man to get up. Yuan Hong was dead. Victory was the hero's. The townspeople were fine, because the second elder took care of it. From his words, the young man calmed down a little, and then the old man turned to the Boar Emperor. Will he congratulate the new prince of the monkey race? But he begins to get angrier than before. The Boar King attacks them with a burning avalanche. Gulan starts smoking from his magic pipe again. He releases the absorbing ring. It covered the old man and the hero himself. Part of the enemy's avalanche hits the ring. The second part of the fire kills the soldiers who came with the elder. Now Gulan and Lu Jun were left alone with the emperor. Seeing that there were fewer targets, the wild Boar King launched a second fire avalanche. The second elder would have been under attack if the hero had not covered him in time. The emperor asked what kind of amplifier Lu Jun had that was able to stop his fire. The prince replied that this artifact was Fan Kun. The fat man's uncle asked him not to waste time looking for a weak point. He simply didn't have one. He thought that with a staff he would be no weaker than the Lion King. Clenching his fist above his head, the emperor created a black rose that shot out thorns. Gulan and the surviving soldiers were ready to defend themselves, but the hero ordered them to go to the city to protect the inhabitants if an attack occurred. Lu Jun released his dragons from Fan Kun so that they, dodging the needles, could destroy the flower bud. Gulan tried to object to the new king, but the young man ordered the battlefield to be vacated. The elder obeyed the instructions. He was offended because when would he ever have such a fight again? The plan to destroy the flower failed, and the master watched in horror as his writhing snakes fell in pieces to the ground. The power of the Boar King is enormous, but Lu Jun simply must hold out until his people are safe. The guy remembers that the emperor also wants to take away the staff. He shouts that Fan Kun is right in front of the wild boar leader, and if he has the courage, let him come and take it. Then he stabs the artifact into the ground and summons the golden monkey. The emperor became more serious because this weapon in the right hands could be dangerous for him. The fat man's uncle recalls how the previous Monkey King used exactly this trick. But after that, Lu Jun's father died, so there was nothing to fear, and he released the high-precision laser just like then. Thinking that from now on, all the Monkey Kings will die like this, the armored spirit beast put up a defense against the beam. But it was ineffective, and the defense was quickly destroyed. On top of that, it had already reached the hero. The Boar King was happy. He was wondering, is this all that the new Monkey King is capable of? The guy fell to the ground, the staff landing next to him. The enemy insisted that the entire monkey race were outcasts from society. Lu Jun lay and his eyes began to fade. He lost, and before his death he wanted to remember his parents. He begins to call them, and his eyes open wide again. After all, he sees a soaring phoenix in front of him. The Boar King immediately recognizes the ancient firebird, but the young ruler does not know what it is. On the continent of beasts, there was a city called Mufu, which was located on the rocks. The Juyu clan lived there. A girl sat and practiced alone. She suddenly opened her eyes because someone had awakened the blood of the ancient phoenix. But she didn't know who exactly. Juyu was sad. This smell was so familiar, like family. Just like her sister, Juyu Meng. She called her cousin, to whom she told about her feelings. But he was categorical. The girl insisted that a child of her race lived somewhere outside their free world. But Aji insists that she could be wrong, because the birth of a phoenix is an extremely rare occurrence, because you need to develop this difficult gift through all stages of growth. Juyu was stubborn because only people from the tribe with the blood of this bird can become a mystical beast of this magnitude. Aji praised his cousin because only she managed to reach such heights over the past 1,000 years. But the girl told him to go and check her feelings. It's just that on the Beast continent, her sister Juyu Meng fell in love with the Monkey King and then married him. She was Dark Sparrow. After her death, Lu Wuji took his nephew and stopped communicating with them. But what was her surprise when she felt the phoenix blood activated? But Aji had bad news. Guardian Ju. Yuhan is a traitor and a thief. Elder Lin Qi, in search of his treasure, lost track of it. Ju. Yu asks him to help the Han Yuju clan. The girl knew that the traitor was from the Han Qi clan, but the stolen wealth belonged to one of the most dangerous clans and must be returned at any cost. Aji says goodbye to his cousin. The guy promises that he will do everything possible and hurries to get down to his business. And the sad girl was again left alone with herself. She remembered the name of her sister's son, her nephew, and I remembered his name is Lu Jun. And in the mansion of the third elder, the young Monkey King admired the bird flying above him. He learned that this was his mother from the mystical and powerful Juyukui clan. The enemy was convinced that the blood of the phoenix really flowed in the young man. The birds are very strong, and he also knew that the ancient clan was the right hand of Muzun. This situation seemed funny to him. Lu Jun gained strength and stood up. The guy threatened the enemy that he was the son of his great parents. But the emperor didn't care. He was going to kill the young king. And when he's dead, he won't tell anyone who he really is. The prince again summoned the spirit beast. He shouted that his father's blood allowed him to move mountains and fill the seas. And the genes of his mother, who was the proud daughter of the Juyukui clan, allows him to rise from the ashes, which makes him immortal and invincible. And when the two bloods united into Lu Jun, his wounds began to heal and his strength to recover. Oh, and the guy didn't envy that the emperor was lucky enough to meet him. Now the young master had a pair of black wings on his back. He was going to finish off the chatty villain. Now it was not difficult for him to reach the Pig King, and Lu Junwu used his sparrow wings to get rid of the emperor's clone. With his staff, the heir to the ape race swung and hit the fat and clumsy pig squarely in the face. Several of his teeth were knocked out. The Boar King became very angry, and Lu Jun felt within himself an unprecedented power and influx of spiritual energy due to the mixing of the blood of the golden monkey and the dark sparrow. The young man touched his animals. He was interested to know which branch of the blood went to him. Once my mother told me that there are 3 directions of the clan. When he was a child, his mother died and his father's heart was broken. He raised his son alone and completely lost contact with his wife's family. The emperor shouted that Lu Jun had become very arrogant, just like his father. He didn't like being looked down upon. Realizing that everyone from the monkey clan was like this, the fat man's uncle was going to kill the young man. The king's image took on the head and body of a pig, and he summoned the destroying fire palm, which he sent towards the young king. The master, ready for battle, flew towards him. The hand overtook Lu Jun, and they began to fight. The emperor's brush was stronger. It almost brought the hero closer to the ground and was about to crush him into a cake. Pig boasted that he was the great emperor of the entire beast continent, who could destroy a rebellious city with one blow. He watched as his opponent collapsed in a pile of stones. But the young man gets out of there. He is still alive and will never allow his hometown to be taken over. The emperor saw that the demonic fire palm was unable to kill Lu Jun. He needed to use something stronger. The Wild Boar King had a remedy in his arsenal, but it would have greatly damaged his body and internal condition. He had no choice but to use it. By placing both hands in front of him, the fat man's uncle caused the Death Demon Fist to appear. Lu Jun coped with the palm. He was not afraid of receiving a similar blow again. The prince threw his staff into the air and Fan Kun increased in size. Picking it up, the hero faced the demon fist. There was a bright flash and then a flash. From such a blast wave, the young king was thrown to the ground and was wounded. The Boar Emperor watched as a space rift formed where their blows collided. He should be wary of this kid because he's just something. Pig reminded that his shadow clone was also at the Supreme Realm level. But the difference in their strengths is still very huge. Hearing from the young man that he was not going to give up, the Boar King spread his fists and shouted that the monkeys would end. Now there was a whole pair of hands above the villain who were going to box with the young king. Before he could dodge the blow, Lu Jun saw someone's hands stopping the fat man's demonic fists. These were the hands of his parents, who came from the world of the dead to protect their only son. Their combined family strength tore apart the powerful arms of the enemy. The boar did not understand where they came from and assumed that this was a residual consciousness sealed in the prince's body. They silently looked at their now adult Lu Jun, and he always felt their protection. He simply could not understand that the forces were following him everywhere. And then these two forces entered the body of the surprised guy. He wanted to spend a little more time with his relatives, but he needed to finish with the enemy. Wild Boar was furious because the former king Lu Wuji, even from the other world, was preventing him from exterminating the monkey clan. Lu Jun felt that his strength had become much greater. His parents shared their power with him, and he had to try to fight off the flying demonic fist. Everything around was in ruins from their battle. Lu Jun asked his hornless dragons for help. They, quickly twisting, flew to meet the danger that threatened their owner. The rift in space began to sparkle with different colors. A hero appeared in its rays. The young man was scared because it was not clear what to expect from this natural phenomenon. The Boar King was weak. The young master's strength had increased, and now it was difficult for him to resist his new abilities. The battle was difficult, and now it was impossible to hold the clone. But then, the villain saw Lu Jun being pulled into a spatial rift. Now he definitely won't survive. Meanwhile, somewhere in another reality, where everything seemed so calm and peaceful, Guardian Ju. Yuhan asked if Yue Ying was giving up. She was a girl with a bow. She replied that she didn't like liars. But the young man's assistant shouted that they were all stuck in this strange rift. The thug ordered to obey his boss because by uniting, they could get home. But she continued to insist on her own because she creates her own destiny. She had no desire to trust life and death to a stranger. But the keeper was not going to leave alive those who refused. The guy called his Phoenix and, without waiting for a blow in his direction, ordered him to fly to the rebellious rebel. And she was ready to fight and loaded her weapons with magic arrows. A fiery torch of someone's energy falls on them from above, cutting the Zhu Yuhan bird in half. People who were nearby scatter. Lu Jun landed and realized that he and the Boar King had been sucked into the rift. But he didn't understand what kind of place this was. The power of the young Monkey King divided the floating island in such a way that the people of Zhu Yuhan were separated from Yue Ying and her like-minded people. Everyone noticed that the newcomer was cool and had great strength. The Guardian decided to take advantage of him and win him over to his side. And Lu Jun looked at the sea. It seemed to him that someone was watching him. And these floating islands surprised him. He realized that he could jump on them to go up. He also saw the palace. Now the young king realized that they were watching from there. Someone very strong and evil. The secret observer stated that everything was assembled. He suggested starting the game he had started. According to its terms, it was necessary to rob the purgatory of destruction and bring all the gold to it. The one who survives will win. Zhu Yuhan was unhappy and immediately wanted to abandon the tournament. But his assistant, unlike his boss, took a battle axe in his hands and rushed up the floating islands. But the man who was sitting on the throne had already lowered the first participant in the competition to his original place. Lu Jun was impressed because he had just witnessed how one of their warriors was injured with one click. The secret spectator is at the upper heaven realm level, while the main participants of the tournament were weighing the pros and cons to understand whether they needed to fight. Game time had already passed. Many people wanted to pass through the rift in space, and the old man couldn't count how many times he arranged a game to take away the treasure of the temple, but each time the competition failed. Fortunately, after each destruction, this place was restored, all thanks to the magic of the treasure. When the territory was ripe for the tournament again, everything began again. But this time, the man on the throne felt that this might be the last restoration. Zhu Yuhan asked those interested, who wants to start the fight and go first? Yue Ying walked towards the edge and almost fell into the sea. The young king of the monkey clan was able to hold her hand. He told her to stay in the center because it was less dangerous there. The wounded assistant told his master that the platform was collapsing and he needed to move to another floating island. Zhu Yuhan thought that the game was really dangerous. He began to calculate whether he would have enough cannon fodder in the form of his servants to understand the rules of the game and reach the finish line. The keeper decides to send 2 people up at once. They walked quite a bit, and in the end, one was burned alive, and the second did not jump to the next level and fell into the sea. An octopus was already waiting at the depths. It caught its prey and held it with its suction cups. Lu Jun watched the scene, and a shiver ran through his body. He assumed that some kind of evil was definitely hidden here, but he didn't even imagine something so terrible. One of the warriors asked Yue Ying what she had come up with because the platform where they stood was beginning to collapse, and there were monsters in the sea. The girl looked at the throne. Her brother fell into a rift and disappeared. She searched for him for many years. Now she is here, and if her brother is not here, she is ready to make every effort to get out and continue the search. Yue Ying took a jade crystal in each hand and told her boys not to panic. The girl was getting ready to lead the soldiers. Lu Jun's hand rested on her shoulder. He asked to let him in first. She saw him for the first time and did not understand why he was in such a hurry to meet his death. She asked if he was confident in his abilities because the previous participants were not ordinary simpletons. Lu Jun replied that after his disappearance, the Boar King definitely attacked the clan, so he must get out quickly. Hearing this, the girl got angry because her brother was also waiting for her somewhere. They were able to come to an agreement. Hoping that the elder would be able to protect everyone, the young man began his ascent to the temple. He slowly thought through each of his jumps, understanding where it would be safe to move on to the next platform. But there were also failures that we had to endure so as not to become food for the giant octopus. But the sea animal was watching the prince, and the next time he jumped, he caught the guy's body. Lu Jun feared this more than any other obstacle. But then Yue Ying, who was following in the hero's footsteps, intervened. She began to launch her unusual arrows, ordering the monster to let him go. It worked, and the young man returned to the gaming platform. The girl was already nearby. She asked if he was injured. Lu Jun replied that he was fine. The platform turned out to be safe, and Yue Ying flagged it for the rest of the participants. And the young master continued to search for good platforms. Observers from below saw that the newcomer was strong, but some servants loyal to their masters did not dare to admire the achievements of others. The smart Zhu Yuhan immediately noticed the potential of the Monkey Prince. He realized that Lu Jun would be the obstacle to win the treasure. Everyone gathered at the storage facility. Everyone remembered the goal of the game, but no one dared to open the door. We tried to remain calm and decide who needs the prize the most. He opens it. Suddenly, armed monsters began to climb out. The giant octopus was unable to feed well on the contestants and now launched the Black Knights straight towards the guys. The platforms were only the beginning of the game, but the monsters were not the end test. Some participants decided to flee to the vault, but a deadly dress code awaited them there. There were a lot of entities. Their number exceeded the guys. Everyone thought about themselves. Lu Jun defended himself with his staff. He tore off the masks from the Black Warriors. They looked like dead people. Someone recognized his brother Dahu, who disappeared without a trace and now ended up here. The former Supreme Realm Master, not Liu Bo, who had reached level 9, would also be here. He also died here. Lu Jun thought that if he lost, he would become a zombie. The young man calls on all participants in the game to unite in order to survive. He hopes that no one wants to be the walking dead. Yue Ying agreed to fight as a team. She thought that her brother must be somewhere among the zombies. The girl mercilessly shot at the monsters. Her arrows hit the helmet, which split open and revealed the face of the corpse. And when she managed to find her lost relative, she seemed speechless. She screamed for him to wake up. She asked if he recognized her. But zombies had no feelings. They were programmed with the goal of killing. The dead brother's sword was about to strike the killing blow. But he was stopped by Lu Jun's staff. The prince covered the girl with himself and asked not to be afraid. After struggling a little, the young king pierces his zombified brother. But these monsters are not so easy to kill. When the Black Knight lay on his shoulder blades, Yue Ying told her savior that she had been looking for this man for a long time. Lu Jun warned her that he was mad, but she didn't hear him. She began to take off her jade chainmail, which was a family treasure. Yue Ying believed that her brother would come to his senses. Their parents were missing, and he was protecting his sister. He was always there, and when leaving, he told me not to take off my protective vest until he returned. The girl recalled her entire childhood and brotherly care. Yue Kai always supported and protected her. Now it's her turn. The chainmail fell on the zombie, and black smoke began to come out of the young man. The guys waited patiently for the result. Yue Kai stood up and saw his family legacy for himself. A familiar voice called to him, and he turned around. Yue Ying cried. She said she had been looking for him for 3 years, and he stood and laughed, saying that he had found night flowers for his little sister. A sea octopus has already appeared on the surface. He almost killed his brother and sister with his tentacles. Yue Kai recognized the monster. He shouted that this creature had killed him. Yue Ying boasted that she had already grown up and would now protect him. But I got nervous and missed a blow from the sea reptile. But the brother was always ready to protect his own blood. He offers to go to the temple. Their salvation is there, and they can simply take refuge. The goal of the game was there, but other participants only joined the ranks of the walking dead. But what to do? Die from the tentacles or go against the green flame? Yue Kai, as a knowledgeable member, said that only people with a strong will and fast regeneration are capable of this, but no one wanted to die here. Lu Jun decides that it is better to act than to quietly wait for the octopus to get to him. The young man decides to go and open the door. The young king touches the entrance to the vault and is enveloped in green fire. The flame began to burn the hero's life force. He continued to push the door, but it did not budge. If he doesn't stop, he'll just burn out. Since the power of the bird clan awakened in the young man, his stamina and spiritual strength are quickly restored. He sets a goal: to open the door. Zhu Yuhan decides to help Lu Jun because it just so happens that he also needs to enter. But the leader of the monkeys himself will not cope. While straightening the ice bird, the guardian ordered her to help her break through the fire. The young man was glad of any help. Now his fever is gone and he is stronger. The door to the temple opened and the participants could see a staircase illuminated by torches. Zhu Yuhan was already standing behind the prince. With words of gratitude, he jumped over the young master and entered the palace first. Lu Jun looked after the fleeing guardian and thought that even in the team there would be rats. The guide tells everyone to come inside. While there were many torches all around, there was an altar in the center of the hall. Where is the treasure then? Lu Jun realized that Zhu Yuhan. So why then did he use it and not open it himself? The keeper replied that the prince would still be useful to him because the game was in full swing. The last to enter the sanctuary are the brother and sister. The young man took the girl inside and returned to the street. He wanted to defeat the sea giant because he took away many famous participants. Thus, he decided to take revenge on the monster. The animal was incredibly strong, and he turned out to be more agile, grabbed Yukai and began to drag him into the sea. The guy shouted at the girl to close the door, otherwise the furious beast would climb into purgatory. Yue Ying was about to intervene because she had only just found her brother, and now she simply would not forgive herself if she lost him again. The young man did not allow her to go out, because then she would become a zombie. She was not afraid of death, all she wanted was to die, but to be with him. Yue Kei couldn't let his sister become the way he was. The young man took out the night flower and gave it to him. The guy's last words were that the girl should not be afraid, he will always be there. And then the door slammed. She began to panic. She ordered the gates to be opened. She wanted to follow her brother. But the green dragon appeared, and Lu Jun was in his power. Through the pain, he said that she should not dare to go out. It was dangerous there. It would be better if she lived. Then her brother's sacrifice would not be in vain. He needed her help, but the green animal swallowed the young king right in front of Yue Ying. Once inside, Lu Jun sat on his staff. The sea was all around, and his spiritual power spread across the waves. How did it happen that he was consumed by green flames and ended up here? The young man knew that when the level of ability reaches the supreme realm, then spiritual power becomes like an endless sea. He stood up and looked into the distance. There was no end in sight. Lu Jun realized that the golden ocean was his endless energy. But his idol was Mu Zun, so after the highest grade, he was going to become a great world master. But an uninvited guest invaded his sea of energy. The green fire dragon was simply chasing the young ruler. How dare the enemy appear on his territory? The guy called the golden demon monkey and ordered him to destroy the snake. The armored animal caught its victim and began to tear it into small pieces. So far, there is nothing left of the fire dragon. Lu Jun had a hard time destroying the enemy. Maintaining this form requires a lot of spiritual strength. And if the young man thought that it would end with one lizard, then no. He had to forget about resting and recovering because he was attacked again. Numerous monsters were flying from the sky. No matter how many there are, we must fight. Lu Jun jumped on the head of his armored monkey. The guy was preparing to fight back, but a flock of beasts simply cut his spiritual animal and the young man fell down. He began to descend into the sea of his energy. The hero did not understand whether he was dying or not. He didn't want to end up like this. She will never allow herself to do this. While the Monkey King was recovering on his own with the help of his parents, his enemy could no longer wait for the hero to rise to the surface. Phoenix appeared. There were 3 branches in the bird clan: fire, dark, and ice. The master thought that he would be like Sparrow's mother, but he never expected that the blood of the firebird flowed in him. Being on the verge of life and death, father's monkey and mother's sparrow united. They evolved into the golden phoenix. Now the king of the monkey race felt real power and was about to eat the little dragons. Having finished with the enemies, he sat down on his staff. Phoenix also exhaled. They were both overtired. From the side, he heard a child's voice asking him to play with her. The little girl did not allow him to rest. Where did she come from? And why did she need to tease the hero? The restless child demanded that the master entertain her. The little girl laughed and jumped around Lu Jun. And when she waved her wooden stick, there was a mini dragon on it. The young man was so angry because he almost died from this creature. He grabbed the kite with his bare hand and began squeezing until it burst. This made the little girl very happy because Lu Jun received an electric shock and now he smelled like fried chicken. He took the cane from the girl and began to scold her. The child just wanted to have fun with his brother, but he turned out to be so cruel. She began to cry loudly and asked to give her her toy. Frightened that she will not stop crying, the hero decides to return the stick. But the reed began to increase in size. What's happening? The branch seemed to come to life and began to tightly squeeze Lu Jun's body. The little girl began to clap her hands and shout that she had caught him. The young master's patience ran out and he decided to deal with the girl like an adult. But first, he wanted to know who she was and what she needed. The little girl began to tell the hero about her mystical race Senro, which was located in Vientiane. Her ancestors are part of the myriad trees. Having learned that Lu Jun knew about the existence of her homeland and the characteristics of her clan, the girl nevertheless decided to hit the young man painfully with her wand. It was a punishment because she did not forgive him for taking the toy. It turns out that the mother tree settled them in different worlds. Many see them as a manifestation of the tree. But she opened up to the young man because she was tired of being in this boring place. She asked Lu Jun to help her get out of this world and into another. But the young man did not want to get involved in this story because then she would not leave him at all. He came up with the idea of saying that she was strong and could handle it on her own. But she cried again. The baby tired Lu Jun even more than the fire dragon. The girl admitted that she was afraid of the giant octopus that lived outside. She insisted on help, hinting that she was still a child. And in addition to the sea monster, the bad old man on the throne wanted to get her. The Monkey King was pretty tired of hanging around in the grip of wooden branches. He tried to find out why he needed to help her, but she had something to offer in return. The little girl promised that the guy would receive a reward when he got her out of here. She moved her wand and the branch released Lu Jun. He did not have time to prepare and fell painfully onto the island. The child jumped on top of the prince and screamed that she would make him mega super duper strong. It sounded funny, but thanks to these emotions, a tree began to grow from the ocean of spiritual energy. Monkeys sat on its branches, and the golden phoenix sat on the top. She said that she would improve the young man's physical fitness using the fire of life. Lu Jun thought that he would indeed become stronger. The girl unexpectedly said goodbye, and the king returned to purgatory through a pillar of green fire. At first, Zhu Yuhan thought that Lu Jun had died. But when I saw the golden phoenix nearby, I was very surprised. After all, their clans have been fighting for a long time. While the guy is vulnerable, the guardian decides to kill him because if the others come, it will be impossible to win the game. Yue Ying rushed to Lu Jun's defense. She pointed her weapon towards the attacker and said that she would not allow the prince to be harmed. But he ordered not to interfere, otherwise she would also die. The guys were also attracted by its green glow, which was placed parallel to the hero's fire. This was the treasure that the old man asked to take. Some members felt great spiritual power, and Zhu Yuhan had his eye on the treasure. After all, this award should go to him. Many participants in the game rushed to the altar to grab the prize, but an electric shock awaited them. The guardian also received his share of ampers. Now the girl looked more like a flying little jellyfish. She quickly fluttered between jumping people. She had fun running away from them. Realizing that he couldn't take the prize with his bare hands, Zhu Yuhan decided to seal the treasure in a huge crystal and then take it with his ice palms. The little girl got scared and started calling her brother. Help was already at hand. Lu Jun's staff easily broke the ice and the child again continued his free flight. The Monkey King had completely returned to his normal state, which meant that the little girl could also take on human form. Zhu Yuhan was not stopped by Lu Jun's unfriendly attitude. The keeper was going to take the restless treasure. And the girl sat on the prince's neck again. Everything seemed fun to her. The guys were going to compare which of the birds was cooler and stronger. But the hero did not want to give the baby, neither to him nor to the old man. Tentacles with suction cups began to penetrate the doors of the warehouse. The child was afraid and asked her brother to save her because the monster wanted to eat her. The participants in the game began to scatter, but the sea inhabitants were no longer interested in them. The reptile crawled straight up to the young man and the girl. She asked if he was scared, He replied that this feeling had left him long ago, and she ordered Lu Jun to kill him. The hero took his staff and went to get rid of the annoying animal. He was pleased with the child's support. Most likely they managed to find a common language. Fan Kun crushed the tenacious tentacles like a meat grinder. The guy also managed to restrain the octopus's deadly gaze. Then the smart animal tried to shoot with its eyes. The young king put up his dragon shield to prevent the bullets from hitting him. But the attacks of the furious beast were simply incredible, and the defense began to weaken. While the little girl took an active part in the fight with the monster, the keeper caught the little girl. She completely forgot that she had to fear not only sea animals. No continent has ever seen such pestilence. The baby was loudly hysterical and waving her arms. She demanded that the scoundrel let her go immediately. Turning to the offender, who was just thinking about how to use her, the girl released green exhale at him. So she took at least a little revenge for the fact that he prevented her from finishing the fight. Meanwhile, Lu Jun flew past them. His shield was finally destroyed by the enemy. The bullets flew after the hero and one of them hit Zhu Yuhan. He found himself on par with the young king. Now they just had to become a team because the sea monster was already holding the small prize. The child frantically screamed for her brother to save her, and he rushed to save, and the guardian followed him. After all, he refused the prize for the game, but none of them managed to save the little girl. The giant octopus threw it into its toothy mouth, after which the beast began to change. He had legs and arms, and only his head reminded him that he had previously been a sea reptile. His roar swept through the temple like a wave and swept the guys off their feet. They both allowed the fierce beast to absorb the energy of the small seed and now watched as it evolved. How can they now defeat this most powerful enemy? A very difficult battle lay ahead. To even save their lives, they had to come up with a plan. Lu Jun decides to take the initiative and asks Zhu Yuhan to distract the beast, and he himself will try to get closer to the enemy, realizing that now he definitely won't be able to cope alone. The guardian saves the hero by putting up his ice barrier so that the deadly tentacles do not destroy him. Meanwhile, inside the furious beast, a small baby was hanging on chains. She felt bad and, as always, called her brother for help. Lu Jun felt that the child was alive and his plan was changing. He suggests attacking together, but the second one doesn't like this option. He doesn't want to help the hero at all. The Monkey King warns that the shield will not hold up for long and it is time for him to go after her. Zhu Yuhan decides that the time has come and pulls out his trump cards. The guardian covers the prince with a shield of crystals and Lu Jun flies straight towards the head of the giant octopus. Having reached his goal, the young man begins to shout to the entire temple about who his parents are and how he managed to achieve such valuable abilities. The prince remembered all his achievements and bright battles. He summoned his writhing hornless dragons to temporarily crush the enemy. The rest of the participants froze. They finally understood who they had to compete with. But Yue Ying listened especially carefully. And with the words that he would never give up, the hero stuck his staff into the beast. There appeared a hole into which he could stick his hand. Inside the furious beast, the girl saw someone's palm. The baby was very happy because it was her brother who came for her. Lu Jun pulled the baby out and she never stopped thanking him for her salvation. But for some reason, the guy didn't show any emotion on his face. But the monster was still alive and they were in danger. The prince took the child in his arms and decided that it was time to end the fight. He summoned his staff. The furious beast screamed loudly. It was his last breath. Fan Kun pierced his head to render his control room permanently inoperative, and the prince went down safely. The old man was watching them all this time. Once the danger was over, Zhu Yuhan returned to his task. He imprisoned the Monkey King and the girl in his freezing lattice. Lu Jun began calling the keeper a dishonest participant in the game, but he replied that he did not intend to be friends with anyone. After all, the game is not over yet. The guy held the ice pearl in his hands. Many years ago, the Zhu Yuhan clan was also part of Phoenix, but when his ancestor failed to evolve, his energy was concentrated on this sea bugle. Fearing that the guardian icebird would become stronger, the hero's mother sealed the mother-of-pearl stone many years ago. But now, when he takes the girl, he will become a real phoenix. But Lu Jun did not believe that his aunt and mother could do such a thing. Zhu Yuhan announced his plans. He was going to kill first the half-breed hero and then his aunt. He will make the Zhu clan respect the icebirds. The young master touched his staff. It was his main weapon and salvation. The baby began to be capricious. She no longer wanted to play. He asked me to hold out a little longer. The enemy was close, he had not lost yet. And saying that he was ready for any difficulties, the main thing is to resurrect his clan, Zhu. Yuhan swallowed the pearls. Seeing that the opponent had evolved, the hero was going to quickly end this duel. The Ice Sparrow attacked Phoenix Lu Jun and saved him by devouring him whole. Fearing that the girl might be seriously harmed, the young man throws the child aside. She was pulled like a magnet in the opposite direction. Now she found herself in the clutches of Zhu Yuhan, whom she had already grown to hate. The guardian looked at his long-awaited prize. He said that her brother was dead, and he rightfully became the new owner of her spiritual power. But the little girl screamed that this was not true, and very soon he would return and punish the bad uncle. The dim golden light inside the icebird reminded him that there was still hope. The child again began to be capricious because his brother did not fulfill his promise. And then Zhu Yuhan locked it in an ice crystal. Finding herself in a cramped space, the girl again began to call Lu Jun for help. But the hero didn't die. The golden light began to grow in size and eventually shattered the icebird like a glass figurine. The guardian did not believe what was happening. Lu Jun was alive because he could not lose until he kept his promise. He walked straight towards Zhu Yuhan. Where his foot stepped, golden water lilies appeared. The keeper tried to reason with the young man. He reminded that the child was just a prize and offered to divide it equally. But the hero refused because he considered the girl his friend and not just a thing. Zhu Yuhan decides to use these words and places the crystal with the child in front of him. Because of this, the Monkey King cannot accurately aim at the enemy. Lu Jun was angry at the enemy. He urged him to be honest and not hide behind the child's back. But he wasn't even going to change anything. Everything suited him, because any attack would hit the girl. The young ruler decided to do something crazy. He flew close to the crystal, realizing that he could die. Zhu Yuhan did not believe that the guy was asking for death. The ice blade pierced the young man until he reached the crystal prison. The hero broke the ice and freed the girl. With the spear in his heart, Lu Jun was still able to attack his enemy. With the child in his arms, the young man prepared for a blow from the guardian, who again summoned his ice bird. What kind of monster is this king of the monkey race? He stood with a blade in his chest, like that same zombie, but only alive. How, and most importantly, with what to defeat him? Is this even possible? The little girl looked at the hero's bleeding wound and became seriously worried. But the prince reassured the girl. He said that it was just a scratch. Zhu Yuhan asked the master if the little one was worth such efforts. But Lu Jun replied that until he freed her, he would not be able to live in peace. Then he pulled out the icicle and threw it at the feet of the keeper. He thought it was all empty talk. Still, he's currently stronger than the leader of the monkeys because he swallowed the pearl. The ice boss already considered himself a winner. His mega-huge snowbird flew up to the very ceiling of the vault, and each of its flaps changed the space around. Lu Jun didn't understand how they ended up in the middle of the snow. The baby began to tremble. She did not like this place, and she wanted to return to the sea of energy to rest and regain strength. The young man carefully invited her to take refuge inside him, and he heard Yue Ying behind him, and the participants were also surprised by the situation. But Zhu Yuhan was in a hurry to answer all their questions. It turned out that the contestants were in a reality he had created, and once in which no one would get out alive. Previously, the beautiful ice bird looked like a shabby crow. The feathered monster began throwing snowballs at the participants in the game. Getting into such a mess, they simply froze tightly in one position. Yue Ying was able to cover several poor souls with her defensive step. Inside was the right hand of Zhu Yuhan, who asked the boss to at least spare him. But in response, I heard that everything would be destroyed. Lu Jun hurried to further protect the girl and her shield, but the guardian was sure that it was useless because they were corpses. The young man voiced his goal for everyone to be free and continue to live. But the dead crow decided that these were all pretentious speeches of the half-blood sparrow. This was an insult to the hero. He decided to show the real power of his body. Transforming into a golden monkey with phoenix wings on his back, he was about to strike. Two legendary entities met. It seemed that this bright warm light would melt all the snow around. And at this time, purgatory began to collapse. Game time is up. And all the surviving participants had to become the walking dead. And Aji appeared from a rift in space that had not yet closed. He immediately sensed the presence of the Han-Yuju clan. And in the fictional reality, the flying monkey trampled the winter pterodactyl. The bird screamed loudly and tried to escape, but no one had ever managed to escape from the strong fingers of the primate. Finally, Ice Crow, under the weight of the enemy, surrendered and fell on everyone in an avalanche. Someone from the crowd shouted that Lu Jun had won, but Zhu Yuhan told him to shut up. He hurried to get up, he was wounded, but he had not yet lost. Looking at his hands, the keeper realized that the pearl was beginning to destroy his body. He hated himself for losing and not being able to revive the Icebird clan. But Zhu Yuhan had an idea in his head that if he died, he would definitely burn Lu Jun along with him. Thinking about suicide, the keeper begins to smoke like a bomb. The hero guessed what the disgraced loser was up to, and everyone began to rush around in search of at least some kind of shelter. But it turned out that everyone returned to reality and stood in the ruins of the destroyed temple. Lu Jun couldn't help wondering what fate had given Zhu Yuhan, and he received an answer. A stranger appeared out of nowhere. A rainbow-colored piece of space was spinning in his hand, where the enemy was sent. Now his place has become a rather specific little world, which can be penetrated if you have a strength no lower than the Supreme Realm. Lu Jun wanted to know who this young man was, and it turned out that he was from Mufu, and if not for the cracks in time, he would not have gotten here. Hearing that the guy was his relative on his mother's side, the young man was at a loss. He was not at all ready for such a meeting, and Aji asked if he awakened the blood of the ancient phoenix. Lu Jun told his uncle the story of his parents, and the guy with the makeup was glad that he managed to find his nephew. He asked why they didn't get in touch earlier. Aji put his arm around the hero's shoulders and suggested that he go to his mother's homeland so that he could meet his aunt. Lu Jun begins to reveal that he and the others are trapped here. But the guy took out the pearl and said that he would clear the way for the two of them. Aji flew into the air and was about to get out of the small hole, but the path was blocked by a huge black palm, and my uncle fell painfully. A throne flew above the participants. The old man concluded that the game is over and whoever owns the treasure will live, the rest will die. But Lu Jun once said that he wanted everyone to live, so he was going to change the rules of the game. Everyone simply didn't know what to think because it was scary to contradict the elder. The old man himself was stunned by such impudence. He asked if the hero was sure that his words were enough for the deity to let everyone go. Then he moved his hand to the side and a tambourine appeared there. He did not allow the rules of the competition to be changed. The white-headed man began to beat the drum and a hand appeared behind him again. The sounds of this instrument gave me a headache. Some participants simply went wild. Then Uncle Lu Jun came to his senses. He, as an experienced fighter, decided to change the game himself, but he had to get to the old man. Aji takes off and starts cutting the black palms one by one. When the musician sensed the presence of the supreme kingdom of the earth, he began to play differently. And one hand, nevertheless, dodged the young man and gave him a painful slap on the wings. He fell straight into his nephew's arms. The nameless old man said that Uncle Lu Jun was not strong enough to change anything. Only teacher Muzun can do this. The man on the throne called himself the Star God. He considered himself the strongest man in all the depths of heaven. Aji hastened to point out that even if his strength is incredible and invincible, it is all in the past and now he is not in the best shape. The old man continued that he had to go through the starry sky and face a conspiracy. After him, he miraculously remained alive, but his level fell to the supreme earthly. Lu Jun realized why he needed Senro from Vientiane to heal his wounds and become stronger. This turned out to be true. The star god had been looking for his healing for a long time and found it here. Unfortunately, the tree seed turned out to be small and protected itself with a unique little world, which the old man was never able to penetrate according to the rules. But based on his rules, the grey-haired man created Purgatory and a treasure hunt game. For many years he waited for it to mature and for him to regain his former strength. Lu Jun again interfered with the old man's monologue. He wondered if he was capable of taking the life of an innocent child. After all, if he gives him the seed, she will die. The star god replied that both she and he would die because the hero didn't want to give her up voluntarily. But the old man will still get it. Then he began to play the tambourine with renewed vigor. But Lu Jun was determined that he would not allow her to be reached. The musician played a fast melody, and black palms also quickly attacked the guys. The old man saw that the Monkey King was about to attack him and prepared a special reception for his guest. The black palm turned into a fist and simply drove the young king into the sea. This happened in front of my uncle and other participants. Yue Ying couldn't believe that the young man was dead. Meanwhile, Star God finished playing and was able to sit back in his chair. He said, "This will be a lesson for the Tongguang clan in their disobedience." And the prince's body slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. The young man was unconscious. How much oxygen will he have? When Lu Jun woke up, he was inside the protective barrier. A plump boy loomed next to him. The prince asked if he was alive and who was his savior. The cheerful, chubby guy turned out to be talkative and happily told the master that it was his uncle who saved the young man and set up protection. The boy turned out to be the staff spirit, Fan Kun. Lu Jun didn't understand why Tree Seed and Staff Spirit were children. When they get together, the young man will feel like a kindergarten teacher. Then the young king asked why he had not shown himself before. But the kid replied that if the hero had not been beaten so badly, he would still be hiding from him. The last thing the boy managed to say was that if the guy doesn't get out of here, he'll get stuck. Suddenly the baby matured. His current interlocutor suited him better. Lu Jun was willing to listen carefully to Fan Kun because he had a plan to defeat the old man. It was necessary to take possession of the source of all beasts. In ancient times, the will of the continent's sacred beasts was concentrated in an incomparable divine object, which was nicknamed the source of all beasts. There were many who wanted to get it. Anyone who took possession of it could subjugate the entire continent of beasts. But when evil tribes from outer lands invaded the territory of the continent and constantly started a war, in the decisive battle, the divine beast continent fell apart. The source also split into 4 parts, becoming sacred items: Fan Kun, Moon Talisman, Sheltering Umbrella, and Seal of Terror. Fate scattered the artifacts in different directions. Over time, thanks to them, 4 races were formed. All you need to do is combine all 4 items and they will become one. Fan Kun was confident that it would be possible to restore the divine source. Even though the star god above was pretending to be evil, the staff spirit was actually afraid of Muzun. Lu Jun was made to laugh by his fear of the great master. And he quickly changed the topic because the most important task was to unite the artifacts. The young prince knew the owners of all the items, but the problem was to call them for help. After all, the star god will not wait for the young man to return from his journey with help. But the cheerful Fan Kun had his own accelerated methods to gather friends. After all, the staff is one of the first main artifacts of the whole 4. He was going to give the order and they would be here soon. The spirit began to show strength. He fired 3 arrows, which were supposed to notify the lunar talisman, Yue Lao, the Umbrella Maiden, and Xiao Yin, the Seal of Horror, about the meeting. In the message, he added that help is needed. Everything looked very cool. Lu Jun was impressed by such cool capabilities of his weapon. The water around the protective ball parted and a blue beam began to descend on the guys from above. The baby was very happy. He boasted that his uncle was very authoritative and it was simply impossible to resist his order. A blue beam pierced the golden dome and the guys were free. A throne appeared at the top and an old man sat in it. Lu Jun pointed to the enemy and asked, "Is this the illegitimate brother that Fan Kun called?" The boy was ashamed and replied that apparently there was a mistake, And on another continent, in the South Sea, Sanjia and Yunwu fought bravely for their territories. The Silver Emperor fell into a coma after the siege of the Lion King and the Boar Emperor. The enemy army was advancing, the guys were suffering losses. The forces were not equal, but they still continued to fight. Suddenly, the guy's umbrella began to vibrate. Sanjia did not understand why this was happening. Was it really caused by the same divine object? What he was most afraid of was that Lu Jun, that his brother was in danger and needed help. But what can you do? Your friend's life is in the balance, but here the young man is also needed. Sanjia consulted the queen of the red-eyed frogs. From the rainforest, they had to retreat to the South Sea and then to Diyuan. Of course, the attacks will continue, but the girl would still be with the boy until the very end. She didn't care what he chose. He was grateful for her support. Sanjia releases his artifact to his brother. The queen, in my opinion, falls in love with the guy. She likes it more and more when he's at home because his speech becomes normal and more voluminous. And near purgatory, the old man played again. Now he has played the Golden Warrior. He waved his blade near his master so that no one could interfere with the enchanted melody. Lu Jun turned to the staff. He was curious to know when support would come. The artifact replied that very soon everyone would be here. And so it happened. The prince saw the sheltering umbrella approaching. The artifact came closer, and the young man could see the spirit of the object. The mermaid girl woke up and asked if he called her. She realized that in front of her was her master's brother. The mermaid acted uninterested. She said that she did not have time to talk. This was a hint that she needed to end the battle as soon as possible. The star god noticed that another divine artifact had joined his victim. But he reassured himself because nothing would change. He could deal with everyone. The staff asked to unite and fight against the evil old man. The Umbrella Maiden was confident that she, as an important addition, could quickly bring victory. The artifact turned into a shield, and Lu Jun was able to defend himself. He easily repelled the old warrior's lightning and could withstand his blade. In the territories of the north in the Shinzo region, there was also a war. The Lion clan unexpectedly invaded the lands of the Frostwolf clan. Ling Xiao ordered to follow her. The wolf leader was worried that this would be a difficult battle. He asked the empress to be very careful. The army behind was already eager to fight. The girl felt that her moon talisman was resonating. She realized that Lu Jun was calling on her artifact. Perhaps he was in trouble. The leader was glad to see the empress return. Under her command, they will be able to stop the enemy invasion from the western desert. Godahu caught up with Ling Xiao and was about to help. He arrived with his tough team of northern dogs and was going to contribute to the outcome of the decisive battle. The empress also could not resolve such an issue without her younger sister. She asked Xiao Kai if she wanted their talisman to save the young Monkey King. The girl was in the Ling Xiao Sea of energy. As soon as she heard what her sister was asking her, she began to beg to save the hero. After all, he saved them. The wolf leader warned the empress that without the divine item, they might lose this battle. But she replied that her friend needed help. Godahu also believed that Lu Jun was a good guy and it was too early for him to die. And if they fail to protect the lands, they will certainly be able to restore them. Ling Xiao then sent out her moon amulet because she couldn't let the young man die and then prepared to attack with the enemy. And near purgatory, the enemy never ceased to test the strength of the Sea Brothers' shield. The young man broke the stones under his feet from such strong confrontations. The Sunhire artifact decided to clarify why the staff called only him. To which Fan Kun replied that not everyone had arrived yet. Lu Jun saw that Xiao Kai's amulet had also appeared. The Umbrella Maiden greeted Yue Lao. The talisman spirit was the grandfather. The elder cleared his throat and said that his journey had been long. He assured the young man that he should not die here. After all, the wolf girl will be very upset. Lu Jun thought that Fan Kun was a booster, Umbrella Maiden was a shield, and Yue Lao had entered the hero's body. The divine items noticeably made him stronger than he was before. This means the chances of winning have increased. While the young man was waiting for the last artifact, he allowed the star god to strike with his blade. The prince shouted that he would definitely return alive and meet his friends again. Hearing the guy's screams, the old man became curious because the three divine objects were indeed working together. He remembered the source of all the animals and the four fragments. Star God couldn't wait for the remaining talisman to appear. He did not stop playing the tambourine so that the young man would not relax, and the last amulet was in the western desert. The Golden City was under the rule of the Lion Clan. The king was sitting in the palace, and the seal of horror stood next to him. The figurine began to glow, and the leader was delighted. The time had finally come, and Fan Kun summoned him. He had long dreamed of joining the rest of the mascots. The Lion King wanted to set out to become the main ruler of the continent. Near Purgatory, everyone was already waiting for the seal of horror. How can you be so unpunctual and allow yourself to be late for an important event? Lu Jun couldn't wait to start the real fight, and all three spirits gathered in safety. They had a separate party. Fan Kun was indignant because the old man was a strong opponent, and even with their help, the young man would not last long. The sleepy mermaid asked not to talk like that about the late Xiao Yin because he is one of them, and they are in no way united. She said that even he will not appear, they will still have to fight, because that is what they are here for. Grandfather knew that the terror seal had always been too stubborn. It seemed like he just didn't want to come now. The three decided to start the battle without the missing element. Putting their hands together, the spirits sent all their strength to Lu Jun. The young man waited until the enemy attacked again. He swung his staff and smashed the blade. The old knight lit up and began to turn into smoke, through which it was impossible to see anything. Yue Ying saw how powerful the deity was. She could no longer allow Lu Jun to fight alone. But the participants said that if the young man dies, then so will they all. Aji was seriously injured and will not be able to help his nephew. He decides to call his cousin. He sent her an encrypted signal for help. Everyone hoped that Ju Yu with her Jizun level would be able to influence the outcome of the battle. The message has already reached its addressee. She dissolved the black bird and found out what happened. The girl realized that they were in danger and decided to thoroughly understand who dared to offend people on her territory. Nothing was hidden from Ju Yu, and she decided that with the hands of Lu Jun, she would put the star god in her place. The girl saw that there was no fourth artifact and helped the hero with her phoenix armor so that he could use it instead of the seal of horror.